all about, you know?
It has to do with just the way our society works. You know, you got to vote with your money.
Well, folks, on that note, voting with money, I'd like to get us rolling again here today. So the general session for ROPA, Tuesday, the 27th, is now in session. I have a couple of announcements. We've had to change the order of the speakers from the Player Conference Council because people actually are going to work and they needed to adjust that schedule a little bit. So this morning, we will have Marc Sazer from Recording Musicians Association and the Pasadena Symphony. And he will be followed by the inimitable Rob Fraser. Bob Fraser will be here as the second player conference from Oxum to be speaking today. So without further ado, Marc, I believe you may begin. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any other announcements that need to be made? All right.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a quick one, Mike.
Oh, okay.
Again, the virtual hospitality suite will be open for delegates tonight. We had a lot of fun last night, and it's only going to get more fun the later it gets. Tonight starts at 8:30 Eastern Daylight Time. Bring a beverage of choice. We're ready to party with you guys, so hopefully we'll see you there, and I'll send out the link when this conference session ends.
Right. So Wednesday night at 10 is going to be a ripping party, huh? 8:30 tonight, 10 o'clock on Wednesday. Thanks. Okay, Marc.
So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you might be. I very much appreciate being able to address the ROPA conference. You know, I've always felt just completely comfortable at ROPA conferences, partially because I play in a ROPA orchestra, the Pasadena Symphony, as Mike mentioned, but I think there's a certain kind of affinity amongst people for whom much of our livelihoods is as freelancers, although we might be freelancing in different areas. So very warm good morning. I'd like to share some kind of exciting news about it. It's something that we've begun doing pretty much this year, having to do with contract compliance. You know, all unions find the need to invest in research, and there are different kinds of research. Unions do research for contract campaigns, for organizing campaigns. There's strategic corporate research, and then there's contract compliance research that we began doing with TV film. We were noticing somehow during the pandemic in particular that there were TV shows, broadcast, cable, streaming, that looked like they were being produced by our signatory employers, that the music was being done off contract, either here or there or overseas. We couldn't find contracts. So we did something, RMA's always done a little bit of this, but we put a committee together. And maybe because of the pandemic, there were people that had some time, but we certainly found people both in Los Angeles and New York who were interested. We did some training. We came up with some methodology, and we ended up compiling a dossier, a report profiling over 50 shows, pilots, series, miniseries over the past few years that were done by our produced or co-produced by our signatories, that the music wasn't done AFM. And I'd actually like to do a quick screen share to show you something that we delivered to President Hare a couple of months ago. Is this showing up? Okay. So yeah, we put together a memo, and, you know, we described, this is expanded enough that it's a slow process scrolling down. Let's see. You know, we described our basic findings that, you know, it's our analysis that there is widespread systemic violation of the agreement. The consequences include lost session wages, residual wages, payment for soundtrack releases and other reuses and new uses, healthcare and pension contributions, as well as ongoing disorganizing non-union employment below industry standards. And of course, one of the other consequences is a denial of work dues, both to the affected locals and the AFM itself. We go on to quote the words from the contract that describe the producer's obligation to make sure that the music is produced AFM, even when they're a co-producer and not a full producer. We undertook a methodology looking at all kinds of sources, including the US Securities and Exchange Commission and Nexus, the Department of Corporations for different states, Copyright Office, the signatory research pages for other unions, the NLRB, and legal system sources. One of the things that we undertook out of both the fear of failure and doing our due diligence was we had consultations with the head of research and economics for SAG-AFTRA, as well as the assistant executive director of the Writers Guild West, who was their past director of research, and they completely corroborated our methodology. So these are the signatory companies who are obligated to produce their music AFM when they produce the shows domestically. And this is a list of shows that should have been done AFM. It's pretty stunning that over just the course of a few years, there are 50 shows here, and many of them are huge hit shows that should have been done on contract, but weren't. And like I say, some of the non-union stuff happened here or there. Some of it went to Prague, some of it went to, overseas. The real issue is that musicians were denied the appropriate covered employment. And just to give you a little flavor of what we did, here's one show that we profiled early on, a TV show called Fargo, a fairly hit show that went for 4 years, began in 2017, produced by MGM Television, filmed domestically. The copyright is held by MGM Television. The signatory of record for Fargo is something called Red Hawk Productions 3 Inc., whose corporate filing with the state of California describes it as TV production entity for Fargo registered to MGM Television Entertainment. So, in a situation like this, I think we all have our roles to play. Our rank and file role is, doing the research, being aware of the business trends, providing information to our locals and to the AFM. The locals' roles in the areas where there are major media markets is to administer the contract, to, I see the question about will the report be available, and I'll discuss that in a second. The locals in the major media markets have an obligation to administer the contracts in a way that protect musicians in the studio and in real time on the street. But of course, the bargaining representation between us and the company itself is the AFM. So Ray here kind of picked up the ball and ran with it. The first thing he did when we gave him the piece of paper about Fargo was he went straight to MGM Television. And I was pretty happy to hear that our methodology was corroborated. They kind of waved the white flag and said, yes, that should have been AFM. And from that moment on, contracts have been filed through Local 47. So real work was brought to real musicians. However, they also said they were digging in their heels. They weren't going to pay for their past violations. And the AFM, in fact, is litigating with MGM Television over this and other shows and other issues. And that also is the role of the AFM. Other shows included settlements where there was something done by 20th Century Fox that Disney now owns. And as a settlement, Disney made one of the companies that had been a producer on this show one of the newest term signatories to our TV film agreement. So all of their future work will be AFM, which I think is a huge win. We're pretty thrilled with. There's something to do with research that is necessary for all unions. But different unions have different levels of resources. I mean, it was pretty impressive to talk with the guy who's head of research and economics for SAG-AFTRA. But of course, SAG-AFTRA's annual receipts are in excess of $220 million a year. Other unions, IATSE, the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, the Teamsters, other unions in the electronic media industries are much wealthier than the AFM. And we have to have this partnership and teamwork between our rank and file, the AFM, and the locals involved. I'm really thrilled with the activity of my colleagues who've stepped up to do this research, learn how to do it, learn how to teach other people how to do it. And I'm really hopeful that we can develop an ongoing cadre of rank and file researchers who have the skills to help each other and help themselves across different areas of our various industries we all work for. To move on a little bit, one of the biggest employers, one of the biggest economic drivers in electronic media for AFM musicians is film, television, and streaming. And it seems like just yesterday, but our contracts are expiring this November. We'll be going into negotiations in the fall or in the winter. And we're preparing as best as we can, given the lack of resources, both on the local and the FM level. The last time in 2018, 2019 that we tried to get a streaming residual and really make an impact in this industry, we had locals that had organizers, and there was a larger organizing staff at the AFM level. Now the AFM is reduced to basically Michael Manley in terms of organizing resources for us, and neither New York nor Los Angeles have any organizing capacity or organizers on staff. So it's basically kind of up to us. Again, it's the rank and file role. And we've worked with Michael Manley. We're in the process of creating a national survey for the affected musicians for the bargaining unit. We began by forming a committee of over 25 people that began doing sort of coordinated, organized outreach to gather topics for a survey. And we've been able to, I think, identify a tremendous amount. I think we're finding a surprising amount of interest and motivation, particularly around the world of streaming. We will be producing a survey over the course of the next month and getting that out to members via whatever the SurveyMonkey or whatever vehicle the AFM ends up using. But in the meantime, rank and file meetings are starting to pop up kind of, on a wildcat basis. There's clearly a lot of interest amongst musicians, and I have a feeling we're going to have much more unanimity and commonality of goals and approaches as we get closer to these negotiations. But one thing I can promise you is that you'll be hearing more about it. One of the key issues that we're looking at in terms of our contract negotiations, as well as in terms of our ongoing functioning as a group, is diversity and inclusion and racial justice in the context of our freelance recording worlds. And I was so interested and uplifted to hear the presentation yesterday from AFA and with Titus. We are struggling with the same issues in the context of very different workplaces. So for recording musicians, we work in multi-employer, for-profit, multi-venue circumstances where no one has a day's worth of tenure. It's a completely freelance environment. Every day that you go to work can be for a different company, a different contractor, a different composer, a different project, a different contract. It's very different than being in the Pasadena Symphony, where we're per service orchestra, but we have a tenured group of people, and whatever the things that we can do are, and it's a not-for-profit institution that has a board of directors, and we know each other. There are different power centers and different stakeholders, so there have to be different solutions. And we need to find solutions for addressing the goals that I think we all share. I don't like to put words in other people's mouths, but I think we all share the common goal is having workforces, musical workforces that look like our communities, that reflect who we are as a larger community. And how we get from here to there and the tools that we use have to be tools that our bargaining unit buys into. So we're actually putting together, or we have put together, a working group with people of color who are sort of significant people in this particular area. And again, you'll be hearing more about this, and I'll be reporting back to you. I think I've gone over my time limit, but it is a pleasure to speak with ROPA, and I very much appreciate your time and effort. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Always a pleasure to have you here with us. Lots of good things to think about.
Mike,
Yes.
there were two questions in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Mark, the two questions were about the ROPA report being, or the report being available that you said, I think you were going to mention if you could publish that report.
What I would like to be able to do is, I don't know if I could just drop it in the chat. I can drop the cover pages in the chat. You know, the full report is something that's in the hands of the AFM and council, and I don't feel, you know, authorized or qualified to kind of spread that. But the cover pages that describe our methodology and goals and basic findings, I'd be happy to drop in the chat.
Great. And the second one was from Nathan Kahn. What can be done when a production is done in Prague, Bratislava, etc.? Can FIM assist in this?
You know, it really depends on who the producer is. And one of the problems that we found, I'm sorry to take more time, but one of the problems that we've identified is that musicians rarely know who the true producer is. It's one thing if you go to work on a Pixar movie or a Disney movie, you know it's Pixar or Disney. But if you get a call for a TV show, or a composer calls and asks you to send in some tracks to help them out, you know, it might be for a major motion picture, or it might be for something completely independent. So it's a long conversation. It can be all over the map.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Sorry for taking more time.
Thanks, Mark. Bob Fraser, are you out there?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mike?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Don't worry about taking up too much time, Mark. I always enjoy your presentations because they're always super informative, as opposed to mine, which are just crazy. It's early out here on the West Coast, and I had a terrible sleep last night. I had one of those musician nightmares. You've all had those, right? Where you're it's usually you can't find a particular article of clothing in your dress code, and then somehow in the process of trying to find that, you end up on the wrong side of the city from where your gig actually is. You all know that. So I actually found the article of clothing I was missing in my nightmares last night. So I feel a little bit more secure knowing that I know where that is. And to be honest, I hope I don't have to go back to wearing tails anytime soon, because the cockroach wings, I call them, because it's very uncomfortable. And I that's one of the things that I hope we do away with after the pandemic, is wearing the cockroach wings. So greetings to all of you. It's really great to see so many of you. I just realized the other day that it's actually been 3 years since I saw many of you in person, and that was in Portland, Oregon. I didn't get to Boston in 2019. So we are long overdue for an in-person visit. I miss my ROPA friends. You are on my side of the continent next summer, so fingers crossed. I'm hoping to see you in the LA area. A quick update from Canada. Our 21 orchestras in Oxum send their greetings. This past season, I'm happy to report that 20 of our 21 groups managed to pay all of their salaried musicians within a range of 65 to 100% of their contracted minimum guaranteed wages. And the average was between 75 and 100%. Now, this was through the help of government subsidies, grant advances and bumps, very generous donations, but was also the result of some cost cutting. For example, production costs were way down. Orchestras couldn't incur travel expenses, obviously, because nobody was traveling anywhere. So in the final analysis, the orchestras did quite well. The real casualty, and of course I'm preaching to the choir here because I know that many of your orchestras operate on a tiered model where you might have a small group of musicians that is guaranteed a salary throughout the season, and then either a second tier or maybe two other tiers of musicians that have smaller or maybe even no guarantees of number of services at all, what we call extras. And those were the real casualties of the pandemic. So that's something that we need to do. Again, as Mark said, we have to do our research. And these are things that aren't always found that easily in the wage charts, to know exactly what kind of a commitment an orchestra is making to the musicians that really help the orchestra fulfill its mandate to the community. A lot of these musicians were cut loose during the pandemic. Now, because COVID workplace protocols varied from province to province in Canada, some of our orchestras were able to work steadily throughout the entire season, producing virtual concerts from their main stages or similar large venues with almost their full complement of musicians. Others had to deal with the frustration of not being able to work for long stretches. And again, it might be the two orchestras that had the exact same COVID workplace protocols, the exact same safety measures in place, but in one place, the government shut them down, and the other place, they were allowed to keep working, which was very, very frustrating. The OCSM delegates, by the way, did not report a single case of workplace transmission during the season in any of our orchestras. Almost everyone tried some sort of digital offering. Over 84% of the orchestras in the Orchestras Canada group did. Many orchestras embraced the digital realm wholeheartedly, producing everything from captured concerts to chamber music to educational programs. They did streaming into senior centers, streams to support frontline workers. Oftentimes, musicians worked from their own studio spaces in their homes, like the one I'm standing in here right now. The organization that supports our managements, Orchestras Canada, did a rather extensive study of how Canadian orchestras managed being basically thrown into the deep end of the pool as far as digital production is concerned. I was privileged, along with the AFM SSD supervisor for Canada, Bernard Leblanc, to be part of a steering committee that undertook this big study of digital orchestral offerings in Canada. This culminated in 3 big presentations that were given to well over 100 staff and musicians of Canadian orchestras. The 3 presentations were on audience development and audience outreach, the financial aspect of it, and the artistic aspect of the digital production. And of course, any examination like that is going to raise a lot of unanswered questions. And of course, the big elephant in the room is, of course, what are we going to do when we go back to live concerts? And all the finances are different, including the fees that musicians were waiving during the pandemic. Now, I can't say enough about the work of SSD during the pandemic on behalf of Canadian musicians, especially Debbie and Rochelle's work alongside our 2 Canadian SSD staff, Bernard Leblanc, who I mentioned before, and Richard Sandals, getting together our very first integrated media agreement for Canada. So we now have an IMA in Canada. Already a few of our orchestras have signed on to it. Hopefully that number will increase in the fall. So as OCSM is getting close, very close to its 50th anniversary, certainly the 50th anniversary of its conception, I have to mark a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of OCSM history for you. I have to mark on the passing of 2 of our original 5 board members of OCSM this past season. David Otto, who was OCSM's very first secretary, and OCSM's first conference was in 1975-76. David Otto, OCSM's first secretary, tuba player with the Edmonton Symphony. He died of complications from COVID-19 on New Year's Day. which was his 89th birthday. He was born on New Year's Day. David operated our conductor database for many, many years, even after he retired from the OCSM board and retired from playing. He was one of the first, probably one of the first musicians in Canada that actually knew what a computer was. And just recently, we lost our very, very first chairperson, the intrepid Ruth Budd, who was a bassist with the Toronto Symphony, the first female bassist to hold a full-time orchestra job in Canada. She died on June 30th, exactly 10 days after her 97th birthday. And to give you an idea of what kind of a person she was, she last addressed the OCSM conference in 2012. And at that point, she was in a seniors residence organizing a choir. She'd never conducted a choir before, but she thought, hey, what the heck? I'm good at organizing people and I'm a musician. So that seemed to be the thing to do. So she was organizing people right up until the end. She had a fascinating life. And you can Google it, Ruth Budd, B-U-D-D, two Ds, sorry. She was wrongfully dismissed along with 5 TSO colleagues in the early 1950s because the TSO could not take these 6 musicians on tours to the United States because, you guessed it, they were blacklisted during the McCarthy era. She not only got her job back a few years later by direct invitation from the new music director, but she kept that job until 1989. So I dwell on this history a little bit at the risk of running overtime. I'm at the 12:30 mark, so I'll wrap up. But to me, this is a very, very important part of what player conferences do. And I put this out in my column in the International Musician at least every 2 years, that it's really important for the people that are longstanding veterans of your orchestras and your orchestra committees, your delegations to the player conferences, to compile the history of your orchestra, even if it's just as simple as going back through your collective bargaining agreements over the last 2 decades and tracking all of the major changes that you've made as you go along. If you do not do that, people will retire and die without passing this knowledge on to the next generation. And it's extremely important that we keep this continuity going, because we sometimes decades of progress can be undone simply because a group of people, a group of leaders that assume the responsibility for our collective bargaining agreements don't understand how we got to where we got to. So that's my big admonition to all of you on this fine, what is it, Tuesday morning? Time is a construct. Time has no meaning. So thank you very much for letting me address you, as always. I really look forward to seeing many of you in person as soon as I possibly can. And I wish you all a very productive conference, and I wish you all a very prosperous season. I desperately hope that we can all get back to doing what we do best. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Bob. That was great. I'm looking for Casey. Casey, I believe, is following up and is going to give us our first conference report from our new ROPA EDI work group. So if Casey will step up to the plate here, that would be great.
I'm at the plate.
All right.
Ready to go.
Thanks, Casey.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm reading this report. I'm precariously balancing like 2 devices on top of furniture that's made for children. So pardon my, looking in all sorts of different directions to deliver this report. So hello to all of you, ROPA delegates, local officers, other friends and loved ones here. This is our 2nd Weird conference in a row. And I feel like words like adaptable and resourceful would probably be more positive and appropriate, but weird is really on the forefront and present on my mind. So I am here to update you on the first meetings of the ROPA EDI work group that we've had this year. And I'm serving kind of as the de facto chair at the moment. First, I want to express my extreme thanks to the presentations given by Afa and Titus yesterday. I loved learning and listening to everything they had to say. I thought that was fantastic. So thank you to them. The ROPA EDI work group is very interested in education, both for ourselves and for outreach into ROPA as a whole. There are really big conversations to be had in an orchestral conference with a majority white makeup. There's just no way around that. So there's lots of questions that we're often asking ourselves, like how do we appropriately represent and lift up our non-white colleagues? Meaning, how do we proceed forward without talking over and taking over? And these are questions that we find ourselves really reckoning with a lot, and we've had a lot of really great productive ideas and ways forward for what we believe is our good next steps for our industry. So we're trying to find solutions both on a macro level and on a micro level. As far as our own personal narratives go, we're focused on languages and solutions that we can take home to our own individual orchestras, and ideas and concepts that we can bring to ROPA as a whole. In order for any sort of systemic change to be truly effective, we're learning that we need to address the change at every single level. This has been stated many times before, but it's so much deeper. This goes so much deeper than just the faces that we see on stage and in the pit. Therefore, we're working to find solutions to address EDI issues on the following levels. Firstly, orchestral makeup, for sure. And the NAS audition guidelines that have kind of been passed around, those have been a wonderful resource, and they sparked some really great key discussions with us. And it's a way that's kind of, I don't want to say obvious, but it's right there for the taking. Our BIPOC colleagues have put forward what we need. They're leading the way for all of us in suggestions of an audition and tenure system that removes a lot of implicit bias. It's obviously not perfect, but there are wonderful solutions and great ways forward for the NAS audition guidelines. Oh, and it's also making us really consider the concept of orchestral culture. And that's something that possibly our colleagues of color experience far different than white people do. Is just the when you're part of any sort of orchestra, and what kinds of cultural interactions really take place after you've auditioned, going through the tenure process, etc. The next level we want to address is board makeup. And this was addressed yesterday. I think Gigi brought this up during the presentation, is looking at the board. This seems to be a wall that we keep running into again and again, because so much of systemic change really depends on true individual introspection. And so the question comes up, how can we convince a group of people that are often so incredibly set in their ways to abandon their, decades long, or maybe even just tweak their decades long ideas and set themselves up for internal reflection? There's possibly on the board side of a lot of orchestras not a huge amount of motivation to do so. So the idea that's been guiding us in the work group is to try and follow the money. And really, perhaps boards will be more apt to listen if they believe there's a financial incentive in diversifying their organizations. Clearly, more meetings are needed on this. This is kind of the what we're swirling around is how to approach boards. Although I was really inspired by Office thoughts yesterday of dissecting the boards instead of going after the boards as a whole, really trying to figure out the makeup of the boards and approach each member on an individual level. And then community engagement. So I want to give a special thanks to Alfonso Pollard for his insight on this particular facet. Many orchestral programs and institutions that we see, they tend to think of community engagement after the repertoire is already decided. So for example, think about an opera company that programs Madame Butterfly first, and then thinks of reaching out to local AAPI groups for their insight and historical education. That's not engagement of the community. That's the community as a last minute addition, or perhaps an afterthought. And so by thinking of community members to highlight and to honor, and then creating a program around them, the community is put front and center, and the orchestra is truly serving their neighborhood rather than the other way around. So how do we encourage artistic directors to pay tribute to, just for examples, grocery workers, people in the medical field, leaders of BLM marches, so many more that you can think of. And, you know, the question is, but why wait for community groups to approach the orchestral organization? What can we do as an artistic incentive to really incentivize our organizations to reach out to the community and actually be a part of the community as a whole? So those are really the big questions that we're wrestling with, that we're talking about. I wanted to just, in general, thank everybody who's been able to come to a lot of these meetings. I wanted to pinpoint quite a few. Mike Smith, Alana Weising, Alicia Vestromonaco, Brooke Beasley, Casey Gazelle. That's Gazelle, not Bozell. We are that close in name. Connie Martin, Elizabeth Marshall, Ari Snowden Rodriguez, Gigi Dang, Lovey Smith Wright, Maya Stone, and Nina Olson. They've been wonderful voices to listen to and collaborate with. And I'm learning so much personally, and I know all of us are really trying to work hard to create a space where everybody's thoughts can be represented, and we can really think about how to move forward as an industry. I just wanted to let you know the ROPA EDI work groups are open to everyone. And if you would like to know the schedule and be part of the kind of incessant doodle polls that I send out to schedule these, all you have to do is send me an email, caseybozell@gmail.com. I'll drop that in the chat too. And I'll make sure you're added to the email list for future scheduled meetings. And Alfonso, you had your hand up. Please.
Yes, Casey. First of all, thank you for a wonderful report. And thank you for what you said about my comment the other day. But what's important to me is that your report reflects the fact that this issue is being taken very, very seriously, particularly by ROPA and other AFM conferences that are invested in this. Okay. The issue of community involvement is important on so many levels, not only in making sure that you're serving the community, but when a player who is a minority player makes it into an orchestra, and when the orchestra programs repertoire that indeed reflects the community, what you find is that those players who are going through their own psychological issues about being in the orchestra, what that does is it provides a level of support to them when they walk out on the stage and are able to see so many people in the audience that look like them. There is a level of enthusiasm, that instills in those players. So we just think that not only recruitment of these players is important, but involving them in the activities of the community is very, very important. So thanks again for your wonderful comments. But the two go hand in hand, the recruitment of the players and the communities that they live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso. Yeah, that's, I appreciate that summation of that. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
I think that's my report. If there are any other questions, you can reach out to me. I'm going to drop my email in the chat too.
All right. Thanks, Casey. We've had a little time zone glitch here, and Janet Horvath, who is our next speaker, we had a problem, and she will be here shortly, but she's not here yet. So if we could just take a little break here for a few minutes, I would say probably 5 minutes or so, she should be coming on board. So if you will take a break and check back here in about 5 minutes, that would be 12:50 Eastern Daylight Time. So we'll hope we'll still get her on board here. Thanks, everybody.
Morning, love it. How you doing? Great. Oh.
Hi, Janet. This is Amanda Swain, the Vice President. We are going to start in about 2 minutes. We took a quick break because we were waiting for things to get organized. So we should be with you. We should start your presentation in about 2 minutes. Hopefully you can hear that. Let us know in the chat if you can't.
Janet, check your computer's volume. Sometimes that gets me. Because I can't hear you.
Sure.
Aha.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. I went running up to get a microphone.
Yep, we're starting to hear you.
Yay. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Can you boost the volume much?
I am. How's that?
That's better. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So I told everybody to come back around right now. So I think you can begin when you're when you've caught your breath and are ready to go, Janet.
Do we have a gallery view? Oh, there we are.
Yep.
Okay. So if you can let me share my screen as a
Yep. You should be able to do that.
perfect. Okay. There we go. So now, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Okay. That I'm sorry about that mix up. And so now do you want me to go? How long do you have?
I think you can just go ahead and go. We our scheduling is such that we have a break at about 1:35 or so, give or take a little bit. If you want to go,
I planned an hour, so
yeah, I think we're okay there.
okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
So hi everybody. I'm awfully sorry to have screwed up the time, but thank you so much for inviting me, Mike, and for all of you to come today for ROPA to speak about a pretty important topic, one of my favorite topics. You might know me as the Hurt Lady, and maybe some of you have heard me before. I speak openly about the physical and emotional strains of playing a musical instrument. So to start, I'd like to review some injury prevention general tips, and then we'll get into discussing how to return to playing and what strategies you can adopt for that. Of course, when I was a student, injuries were common but not out of the closet, and it didn't enter my mind that anything might interfere with the dream of playing the cello and possibly becoming an elite professional. I didn't consider the many roadblocks that could happen: demanding schedules, a demanding conductor or orchestra director, a difficult repertoire, a highly competitive environment, the tenacity and will to stick to it all the time, no matter what. Certainly, I didn't imagine injury. And no, not this kind of injury. I ignored the danger signals, the fatigue and pain. I was in denial. But soon I couldn't even use a knife and fork. I couldn't wash my hair or turn a doorknob or carry a cafeteria tray, let alone play the cello. I'd embraced the prevailing mentality that there was no pain, no gain. And I panicked. I thought my life was over. I saw about a dozen doctors. And in those days, they shrugged and said, well, how can it hurt to play? It can't be as difficult as ditch digging or football playing. And you musicians, you're so sensitive. Maybe it's all in your head. Maybe you're all hysterical about this. Or maybe you need to try a new career, do something else. And I thought, I can't do something else. The cello is my identity. Music is my identity. Well, since then, I'm happy to report there are books, clinics, textbooks, videos, journals, and websites, and every other post on Instagram is about physical attitude to an instrument. So it's really come a long way as a field since I started. But nonetheless, we musicians still too often suffer pain and dysfunction at odds with our skill and seeming ease of playing. We're so motivated to perfect our chops and enhance our expression, of course, and skills that we may reach the breaking point. Blam. We're willing to self-destruct in order to make our music happen. Elite athletes sustain injury too, but what we do is just as vigorous, although it may not look like it to the outside person. Even more challenging since we play for decades longer than most athletes or dancers. We are really the small muscle Olympians. And it's really an important and scary subject for young people especially. There's a very high prevalence among even our youngest musicians, but there are strategies to combat any physical tension that we might encounter. But let's remind ourselves that playing music is an amazing endeavor. On fire. Hopefully we get back to those numbers of people on stage and sitting so closely together. Seriously though, it's amazing what we do. We demand the utmost precision, coordination, fluency, speed, and skill from our bodies. We're disappointed and even devastated when our bodies let us down. Ensemble musicians have unusual stressors. And non-musicians may not have any concept of the daily rigors of our desire to play, whether it's in a full orchestra or a band or a small ensemble. The truth is, we have little control over so many aspects, which affect our well-being physically. In an orchestra, chamber music too, you know, we may get to the point that we're melting, literally. We have lack of control over programming, scheduling, our techniques sometimes, rehearsal techniques for sure, tempos, stage placement, which may be awkward, our equipment, and the conditions. We often have inadequate preparation and rehearsal time. We have inadequate break time, which is really an issue. There is difficult and demanding repertoire, sometimes harder than we know how to play. The standards seem to be getting higher and higher, just as in the Olympic standards. And our art is audible during rehearsals and performance. Other artists can throw away their work when they're unsatisfied with it. But the most important thing for injury risk, though, is the high repetition and awkward postures, some of which we have to get into to play our instruments. And I need to explain this. I like to use the analogy of a car, because the conductor is in the driver's seat, or the leader of the band. So you as a driver are prepared. If you have to do a hard right or a sudden stop, you know it's coming and you brace yourself, but it's the passenger that goes through the windshield. The conductor is in the driver's seat in a large ensemble. That person may stop or start suddenly, freeze at the end of a piece, no time, giving you no time between movements. You never know the tempo. You may suddenly have to lurch forward in tempo or slow down where you run out of bow or air. So your motions end up being jerkier in the larger setting. Some conductors are demanding with thoughtless or inconsistent rehearsal styles with the expectation that you should go out all full out all the time. That's a problem. But at home, you're more in control of your movements. Then you can be more fluid and play with more ease. You can stop when you need to. You can roll your shoulders or hang your fingers down, arms down. So that's why it's harder to play in an orchestral setting or band setting than at home. So what is overuse? It's when the body tissues have been stressed beyond their biological limits. And we now know that there's a cumulative effect of playing too much, playing too intensely, and playing too much at one time without a break or without rest. Here's my little caricature to illustrate this. What we know now is that sometimes these issues can add up over a whole career even, not just a few weeks of intense playing. These disorders of the musculoskeletal system can affect bones, joints, and ligaments, tendons, and muscles. But repetition is the main culprit in combination with poor posture, excessive force, stress in our lives, and playing too much and intensely. That's the recipe for disaster. And historically, the expectation during musical performance is to produce at any cost. Efforts to achieve the required and expected outcome increase the severity of effort in many players. So to dramatize my point about repetition, this is my favorite story. You may have heard it, hopefully not. But Bolero is a piece by Ravel that pretty much everybody knows, even laymen know it well. It's a case in point of repetition. Poor snare drum player. He or she has to play a 24-note pattern over 2 bars, as you can see up there. So it's in a piece that's 430 bars. I usually ask people to guess how many snare drum strokes there might be in Bolero. Well, there's 5,144 snare drum strokes, not taking into account the tremendous control of dynamics and tempo that's required. So I went to our snare drum player, Brian, and I said, Brian, do you have any idea how many snare drum strokes there are in Bolero? He says, I don't know, Janet, 500, 600? I said, no, 5,144. He says, don't tell me that, Janet. I don't want to know that. You didn't really count these, did you? And I said, yeah, I guess I did. He says, you need a hobby. So I've become known as the counting lady also. So he has to go unrelentingly, or she, unrelentingly steady in tempo, from a very quiet pianissimo to a huge climax. And sometimes we would play this piece more than once in a day. And that's a tremendous amount of repetition. Some specific techniques are written into our repertoire and are physically taxing. Like, as string players know, tremolo. Well, we kind of think Tchaikovsky is the, one who has lots and lots of pages of tremolo. He does, but so does Sibelius. And I hope you can see this, but I don't know if you can. But I once counted in Oceanauts, which is a very obscure Sibelius piece that we played with Osmo Vanska and the Minnesota Orchestra, and in 22 bars of 1.5 minutes in length it took, there were 589 bow strokes. And I went to Osmo, I said, from here to here, it's 1.5 minutes, it's 22 bars, it's 589 bow strokes. And he caught himself for a second. He almost, his mouth fell open. Then he said, Janet, thank you for counting. So, but, and there's countless examples of repetitive notes in winds and brass, triple tonguing, fast passage work. But know that slow, soft playing can be even more taxing because we're holding positions and we're afraid to even breathe. So as we've noticed, stress injuries occur due to highly repetitive tasks. And repetitive strain injuries account for half of the injuries that we do see. These are muscle tendon overuse injuries. But other injuries can occur, and they're called nerve entrapments, and any nerve can be compressed. In musicians, there are characteristic sites. So here's a slide of the 3 major nerves that come all the way down from your shoulders into your hands: the median and ulnar and radial nerves. Well, carpal tunnel syndrome has become the malady of the 21st century, and now we musicians are vindicated because it's not hard to type quickly on your computer, physically hard, but the repetition can result in these injuries. So there are 9 tendons and membranes that have to squeeze through a narrow tunnel at the wrist. And if you put your left fingertips on your right wrists and wiggle your right fingers, or you can do it the other way around, whichever, you will feel these tendons and membranes going against this wall in there. We neurologists calculate that we can do an amazing 38 notes per 3 seconds, which is like the human limit. That's twice as good as a really good typist. And that tunnel can get inflamed because it squeezes the nerve. And then you feel numbness and tingling and pain. Here's a photo of that, where all those tendons and membranes go through a narrow tunnel at the wrist. So in order to, and that can happen on any instrument, of course, if you hold a flute or clarinet or any of them. So what we want to avoid is wrist flexion and deviation. Deviation meaning reaching towards the pinky finger, and that we may do even on the computer when we're typing. Repetitive finger action, and prolonged sustained grasping, so it can be exacerbated by not only trying to carry instruments, but by squeezing the neck of your instruments or the instrument itself. Thumb pressure or grabbing, and those are the things to watch for. You can also have ulnar nerve entrapment. So that other nerve that you saw that goes through a tunnel goes through a narrow tunnel at the elbow. And it's more exacerbated when your arms are bent. Well, there's almost no instrument that we play that our arms aren't bent. And the tunnel's narrower when our arm is bent or twisted like a violinist. So all the more reason to sometimes let your arms hang down whenever you can to reduce that pressure there. Risky postures, we can get into them very easily. Are we guilty of the jazz look? Some postures we get ourselves into. Do we perpetuate this look so we seem into it? Does it seem like we're playing with more intensity or passion if we get into these positions? None of them are very good for you. So what are the risky postures? In necks, tilting, cocking, or rotating heads, anything that's off center or not neutral, because your head has weighs 15 pounds or so, give or take how many rocks are in there. So it's a hidden lifting task if your head is off center. In torsos, bending or twisting, collapsed chests, hunched postures compress your organs and the spine, and it obviously will prevent proper breathing, and that's a problem for everybody, not only wind and brass players. Reaching or leaning, that is a risk factor for pianists, for percussionists. This is a great painting, but it's really poor posture. In shoulders, holding arms at or away from the body, above or at shoulder height. So, well, we all hold our arms out almost with any activity. So you want to let your shoulders down. Allowing shoulders to droop or hunch to, or raising them, can eventually cause problems. In hands, pressing fingers, pressing thumbs, squeezing instruments, or allowing your wrists to drop or droop, and that's on any instrument. In wrists, flexing, dropping, or deviating, any extreme position of the wrist. And also watching your hand position, grabbing or stretching, holding your fingers. No, we don't want to do this, and squeezing the instrument. We want curved fingers with some length and a bent thumb. That's on the clarinet too. That's on, any instrument. Try not to slam your fingers down. Avoid pressing, because obviously a quick technique is from lifting quickly, maybe, and not having every finger pressing equally except the playing finger. Same with grabbing a pick. We want to minimize the slamming, the squeezing, pressing, and we want to avoid or minimize double stops, exercises, chords, octaves, and stretches, anything that's unnatural. We want to get out of those positions as quickly as we can. Listen for snapping strings or clacking keys, because that can indicate that you're pressing too hard. Lifting quickly is up action and release. Use the least force necessary and minimize those passages and come back to them later rather than, getting stuck on a passage. Now let's talk about posture and sitting. The highest rate of back injury are in those instrumentalists without back support or who have to lift a heavy instrument. Well, we're all built differently, and each instrument has different requirements, needing different chairs. Unfortunately, we're the ones that tend to have to adjust to multi-purpose chairs. Many are molded or slope backwards, or they're too low. These are all difficult situations. So again, anything that's off your neutral or natural position, is not a good posture. You want to maintain the lumbar curve in the lower back that's natural to you when you're standing. And if you have any doubt, you can lean, go to stand against a wall and feel if you, when your shoulders are against the wall, your head is against the wall, and your heels are, feel that lumbar curve and feel if that when you play, you feel like, oh, that doesn't feel normal. I usually tilt this way or that way. So any turning in your torso can compromise your spine. Anything away from neutral. So the risk for a slumped, collapsed diaphragm and spine can happen when we're seated, especially if the chair is inadequate. The height of the chair is really important. So if I sit, I'm 5 feet tall, I'm a little person. If I sit all the way back in a chair, my legs dangle. And you, someone who's 6 feet tall, if you're sitting on just an ordinary chair, especially a folding chair, you might feel like your knees are in your face and suddenly your back is thrown into a C curve. So what's really critical is that your knees should descend from your pelvis when you're sitting. So a downward position with your feet firmly on the floor and your weight forward. So this is what can happen if you're leaning back or the chair is too low. The chairs need to fit you. There are many new chairs out there that are ergonomically designed and adjustable to fit musicians. The Wenger Corporation, which is local in Owatonna, Minnesota, they make symphony chairs, and this was the first prototype. It can be adjusted to lean slightly forward. Now you can see that there are something like blocks or hockey pucks under the legs here. This particular colleague is very, very tall, and he needed a higher chair. There are many, many custom lumbar and seat cushions available on the market. They're great. They're not expensive. You can take them to gigs. This is the new prototype. It's called the Noda chair, and it's fully adjustable. You can adjust the back height. The legs will go higher or lower. The seat will lean a little forward. And for those who've never had back support, such as bass players or harp players, Concert Design has designed chairs for you that you can at least get back support, if only in the rests, to make sure that you don't tax your back too much. But I have to tell you that Amazon sells this a Just Right musician's chair that folds up, and it's a really good height and firm seat, and I would highly recommend buying it if you tend to play a lot of outdoor concerts or gigs. It's a very good chair. Now, about practicing. No time to waste. But we're kidding here. These are my 5 practice rules that are really critical to remember and keep in mind, not only now when we're just getting back to playing, but anytime you're preparing anything. Warm up. You know, when we're kids and we can launch into a, Brahms sonata or, a study or whatever it is of symphony, it catches up with you later in life. So if you get into the habit, even with your teaching, to start the lesson with a 5-minute warm-up, to get into the habit, first it would be great to do a warm-up away from the instrument. So especially in the winters here, especially, to run up and down the stairs or do jumping jacks, or, if you're a yoga person or an exercise person, go swimming, whatever it is, to warm up your body. And then at the instrument, to stay in the mid-range of the instrument, avoid awkward postures, Not too high, not too low, not too fast, and not too slow. That's how you should start. Doing studies and scales, those are technique building things that you need to warm up for. That's not warm up. Take breaks. 10 minutes per hour is really an important thing to keep in mind, but don't forget to uncurl your arms, do a shoulder roll, wiggle, get up and get a glass of water if you can, if you're not in an orchestra rehearsal. But really, it's very important to keep the breaks because your muscles can recover 85% of your fluidity after a break, and then you can keep going. Vary your repertoire. Now, this is kind of a no-brainer, but a lot of people might get stuck on something that they're passionate about or determined to master. And know that if you're playing Strauss or you're playing Mozart, those use different muscles. And so you don't want to tax a certain group of muscles. Go back to it later. Take a break. Isolate. Avoid mindless repetition. Choose your repertoire carefully. Analyze and isolate passages. And if you've got something that has huge chords or double stops or stretches or extended trill passages, focus on them for 5 minutes and then come back to them another time later. Alternate easy passages with harder ones. Increase your practice load gradually. Now, this is what we're going to get into in a little bit, but this is true if you're going away to a festival, if you are getting ready for a jury or an audition or a big performance. We don't want to go from playing 1 hour every other day to 4 or 5 hours a day. And this happens with young people who end up going to a summer festival, and then suddenly they're playing a lot more than they're used to. Reduce your practice intensity prior to performance. By the point of a week or so before you're playing, you know it. You should know it. You don't need to be physically doing it every minute. You can study the music visually, you can study it orally, you can sing it, you can hum it, you can visualize it. All these things, your brain can learn the music just as well, apparently, just as well as if you're actually physically doing it, and you don't want to tire yourself out before you have to go out on stage. So it's really important to plan your practicing, as I've already talked about. If you can write down a practice plan, which I have one, and hopefully you received it, to include the warm-up and break time, but to also talk about, okay, I'll practice Mozart on days 1, 3, and 5, and I'll practice the, Strauss on 2, 4, and 6. So to alternate the repertoire. Set realistic goals and don't get stuck. Monitor the number of contests, performances, auditions you're in. Don't overschedule yourself, or you'll let your students get overscheduled. But it's also really important to write down how you felt after each practice session. Because I often hear from people, oh, everything was fine. I could nail it, no problem 2 weeks ago. And suddenly, it hurts. And it's rare that one suddenly has an acute injury. It's more common that it's cumulative. And it's sometimes really difficult to trace back to when things started feeling sluggish or tired or achy, unless you do write it down, and that's very helpful. So, the contributors to overuse. This is really an important list. Excessive force. Concentrate on lifting. Fixed and awkward postures. So if you have to hold, an instrument in a weird way, get out of those postures as quickly as you can. Watch your repetition. Watch your duration and frequency of playing and your intensity of playing. Be careful about anything that changes abruptly. Your setup needs to be good. If you have leaks in your wind instruments, or if your instrument is resistant in some way, get it looked at. Watch what kind of repertoire you're playing. Make sure that it's not, way beyond the person's ability. Individual variations in anatomy, someone who's 5 feet and, very slender has different issues, or someone who has a long neck or a short neck or, drooping shoulders. These all can affect your well-being at the instrument. And what kind of teaching or playing or conducting style are you subject to? So, oops, we're not going to get to JAWS yet. Just a second. Sudden changes can be a risk factor. So suddenly you're trying a new technique, or you have a new teacher or a different conducting person who has a different style. You have a new instrument that might be too big or heavy or doesn't fit you or is resistant. The strings may be too high. The chin rest and shoulder pad are ill-fitting. The reaches might be too far on the instrument, or the setup is resistant. Sudden increases in practice due to anything, a performance where stress will increase. You don't want tension to increase too. And then there's always the external contributing factors, which are the life stresses, which we're going through right now, in fact. Okay, JAWS. It's important for all of us to have an openness or space in our mouth. Many of us clench our teeth or clench our jaws, clamping down on instruments. You should always think lips together and teeth apart. Relax your jaw often and do an air mouthwash or a fish face to make sure that your face is loose. This can cause a lot of problems, especially in wind players. If you're, clenching at night, especially, some of us tend to grind our teeth at night. A dentist can check that, so get a diagnosis. It's really important, especially also violin players. If you press too hard on your jaw, that can even cause facial asymmetry. There are many props out there to help us. Oh, not that kind. But it's very important to know that one size fits all doesn't fit anybody. The chin rest that your violin or viola happen to come with may not be the right one for you because your jaw shape may be different. And it's very important to fill the space between the shoulder and jaw. Here's a particularly tall colleague who had a custom-built chin rest and high shoulder rest so that person could maintain a neutral and, not gripping, pulling up the shoulder with their left shoulder. So there is a wonderful company, well, there are two people, Frisch and Denig, who have a chin rest fitting system that will incrementally increase the height of the metal there on the chin rest so that you will be fit and viewed from behind so that your head can be totally upright. And these kits, you can order them. You don't necessarily have to go to Norfolk, Virginia, where they are. Size of instruments is really important. The instrument should fit you. And it's not only important for young people. You need to ensure comfort. Smaller, lighter instruments with carbon fiber bows and lighter fingerboards. I mean, nobody got injured from an instrument that's too small. And especially when we're talking about viola, sizes can vary dramatically, and no one should be playing with their arm totally extended and holding a heavy instrument. So there's a lot of props out there that can help us with our instruments. Now this Pellegrina viola is been around for now more than a decade. And the very first reaction to it was, you left it out in the sun too long, or, oh, that looks like a Salvatore Dali viola. But they're getting to be more commonly used. The instrument is elongated so that none of the interior airspace is lost, but the shoulder is shaved down so that it's easier to get up into high positions. And they're making basses like that and cellos with sloping shoulders nowadays. And then there's all kinds of other props to help hold instruments. Now here's an example of someone who's not that tall, who had the timpani sticks built up a little longer, but also to allow less vibration going up the stick into the person's arm. And they're making polymer drumsticks now that reduce that vibration. We're getting people that are developing all kinds of end pins for instruments to help you hold them. This is called the Fred, that allows you freedom, but it supports the instrument on the chair in between your legs. Of course, straps have been in use for a long time, but you have to be careful not to have too much weight on your neck. People are building out keys so that one doesn't have to stretch as much. Here's a saxophone palm key riser. And new bocals for bassoons and crutch so that you can keep your wrist in neutral. So a lot of people out there are being very sensible about equipment for instruments. Here's the a support for the bassoon that goes around this person's chest, so it's not all on the neck. You don't drill anything into the instrument, so it helps hold it. And I don't know if we'll ever get to a vertical head joint, but people are playing with the swan neck head joint for the flute to try to have your head a little more in neutral. And there are supports, I don't know if you can see that well, but here also the tuba is being supported between this player's legs on the chair. If, for example, you do have to have shoulder surgery or something like that, there are supports that can hold the instrument while you're getting back in shape, and that is great. So now we get into people who are double jointed or who have joint laxity. Loose individuals are vulnerable. Joints, when they are hypermobile, collapse on you, and you've always been yelled at by your teachers to keep your fingers round. So we end up using extra force on those fingers to keep them rounded, and over time you can injure your joints due to that. So here are a series of ring splints that are available. They're prescribed medical devices that have to be fit by a licensed physical therapist. They can be skin tone and hardly can see them, but there are silver ones that look even fashionable, and you can put gems in them if you want. But I can assure you that you can play with these, and it supports the joint. I've seen, this is a different kind that was made by a physical therapist that does the same trick, and you can play with these things comfortably. There are other options to decide about using with your physical therapist. Kinesiotaping, for example, it has to be someone who's licensed in that, but maybe you've seen Olympic athletes use this. So it helps reduce inflammation. It can get you through a difficult performance schedule. It's not a cure, but it can help a lot, and you can learn to put it on yourself. So I really want to emphasize that it's important not to sit like a statue whenever, on stage, during a performance, and during rehearsals, and especially at home. There are many little, I call them my onstage tricks that you can unobtrusively do to give your body mini breaks. And a few of them are chin tucks, neck stretches where you look over your shoulder to the left, over to the right. Oh, those flutes sound so good today, or lowering your head, shoulder shrugs. Even one big shoulder roll can reduce a whole lot of tension. You can reach behind you with an arm so that you stretch your pectorals, because everything we do is forward bending. We want to do the opposite of that. Like leaning into a doorway. Well, we can do that even on stage by reaching behind us in the chair and leaning into it. Make sure you let your arms hang down as much as you can. Circle your wrists, circle your thumbs, release your fingers. You can do a trapezius squeeze by just bringing your shoulders back together. Even when you stand and take a bow, you can squeeze your glutes. You can put one arm behind you and stretch up towards your neck, and that can give you some stretches. So whatever you can do to keep moving is really an important thing. We definitely don't want to be struggling. We need to have ease of playing. So let's review some of the prevention tips. Lightly press with fingers which release. Avoid grabbing with fingers and thumbs. Keep your wrists neutral. Sit or stand upright. Keep your shoulders down, relaxed and facing forward. Avoid twisting or turning torsos. Play with good posture and take breaks. Limit your practice periods to 50 minutes or less when you're in shape, I mean. Practice in multiple periods. Avoid marathons. Make comfort your priority. Monitor your non-musical activities too. If you do something that, you're helping your friend move or painting somebody's apartment, your arms are way above your head for a long time, and that can add to your issues. Practice at reduced tempi, reduced intensity, and reduced volume. Memorize away from the instrument. Cool down, warm up, take time to stretch and wiggle and keep moving. Stay as neutral as possible. Avoid extreme positions whenever you can. And if you have to practice them, get out of them as soon as you can. Watch for jaw tension, finger and thumb pressure, and keep reminding yourself about playing with ease. So now let's get to the gradual return to playing. Now this is a re-entry schedule that I've done countless times. This is mainly after a long period of time of not playing and or starting again after an injury. So if you've had an injury, you should only start at the point where there's no pain and your physical therapy sessions and plans are over, because this is enough exercise for you and it's easy to re-injure yourself. So start with 5 to 10 minutes in the mid-range of your instrument in comfortable positions. Now I know that sounds crazy, sounds like so little, but believe me, this is the most cautious and efficacious way to get back to playing. Increase the number of sessions per day before you increase the length of time. So start with 5 to 10 minutes, go do that 4 or 5 days, then do 2 sessions of 10 minutes, then maybe 3 4 days later, then increase to 15 minutes or 20 minutes once a day, and then maybe one 20-minute and one 10-minute session, and then maybe one 20-minute and one 15-minute session before you add time. Start gently. If it's cold outside, for sure, make sure you're warm both physically and, your muscles are warm. And if you feel any aching, tightness, or hot feeling, ice afterwards, be vigilant about your posture and have patience. It's really important to heal completely, especially if you've had an injury. But now that so many of us have not played hardly at all for such a long time, and things are opening up at the workplace, we really need to be very slow and careful about our coming back. So this is hopefully the handout that you did get. I hope you did. This is a schedule that I put together for getting ready to do an audition. And it was when I was not injured or hadn't been, taking a very long break. But it gives you an idea of how you can divide up your time that's gradual, that gets you to where you need to be within 4 weeks, after a 3 to 4 week vacation, a 10-day schedule, then a almost 2-week schedule if you have to get from 15 minutes to a double rehearsal. So that's just an example. I would go slower than this even if I hadn't been playing all through COVID. But gradual return at the workplace is really important too. And I know that some of you may be freelancers. This isn't a luxury that we all have. But the way it's worked with the Minnesota Orchestra and some other professional orchestras is after rehabilitation, you get a go-ahead from the doctor to return to playing at the workplace. And now, as I told you earlier about the car, being the conductor being in the driver's seat, you want to come back not only to a lighter program, but sit at the back and play only a few minutes maybe, or then one piece. And then maybe a week or two later, you graduate to half a program, and only when the doctor gives you the go-ahead do you then do a whole program. Now, why would that be? This was the only way to figure out how to work it so that the insurance company continues to pay the health benefits, the sick leave, while the orchestra contract says, hey, we don't hire anybody that plays part-time. So the orchestra continues to hire a sub while the musician is in a work hardening program. And so the sub plays everything, and the musician goes as slow as they need to until they're ready to do the full program. So this makes total sense, and it works really, really well to make sure that the musician doesn't re-injure themselves. And, it's to nobody's advantage if they do. Okay, so, just before we talk about that, I wanted to talk about danger signals. Of course, pain, but it can be a lot more subtle than pain. It can be muscle burning, swelling, tightness, stiffness without pain that can wax and wane during or after playing, or weakness, something, that you could nail no problem a couple weeks, you have impaired dexterity or fatigue or heaviness in your arms. That's a sign that something might be going awry. Muscle failure to maintain the required or expected force. Maybe also you're getting clumsier and not able to do buttons up or dropping stuff. That's a sign. Especially loss of sensation or touch. Any tingling, numbness, clumsiness. Really, if you have numbness, that's a sign that you really should back off and have it looked at, because nerve entrapments typically will present with numbness. Now, a lot of injuries have similar symptoms. That's why I would encourage you to see someone immediately to get a proper diagnosis Don't have, your friends say, well, I felt that way too last week. And, it could be something totally different. And loss of control without pain can also be an injury. The earlier these things are recognized and treated, the more likely you can have a complete recovery. So get a diagnosis. We're very lucky in Minnesota. We have lots of really good performing arts specialists, but the Performing Arts Medicine Association, if you just go on artsmed.net, they have a referral service, and they'll put you in touch with a lot of people that do work with musicians and know what you're talking about. And don't forget to analyze what you may have been doing at or away from the instrument, so that you can figure out what might have caused it, and take time off. It's important to give it enough time. Know that ligaments and tendons don't have much blood supply, and so you can compare it to why a sprained ankle can become chronic, whereas a broken ankle doesn't necessarily. And that's because you put it in a cast and you leave a broken ankle alone for 7-8 weeks. And then you have physical therapy to kind of ease back into it. But the sprained ankle, you're testing it every other day. You want to try to walk on it, and that never really heals properly. Be patient and follow through with physical therapy. So, I'd like to talk about the pandemic and our unique issues that we're having right now. So I'm going to come out of this. I wonder if I can find you. Let's see if I can find you. So why are we having so much time? Can you still hear me? Hopefully, yeah, okay. So there are a lot of things that are affecting us right now with the pandemic. There's, first of all, the unique issues of we don't know when it's going to end. We don't know if we're going to be able to play somewhere, and if that's going to go ahead. We have a lot of fatigue going on right now, too. We can't sleep. We can't concentrate. It's been an emotional marathon. And anytime there's any kind of trauma where our lives are in upheaval, our sense of safety and stability have been upturned, and we're overstressed, and sleep is disrupted, but so is our anxiety and stress level. So of course, because of that, that contributes to muscle tension, tight muscles, increased heart rates, and chronic stress, believe it or not, triggers low-grade inflammation in our muscles and tendons. So, as I've spoken about already, tiredness can be a symptom, one of the first symptoms, and of course it can also be a symptom of depression. Fatigue can often be the first sign of an injury. So what can we do? I really encourage practice buddies. I know that some of us are on the cusp of being able to go out and play publicly. But if you're still at the point where you're not, try to get together with people online, encourage each other to practice, encourage each other to, try a new piece together. And, if you're the same level, challenge each other to a couple of passages. It's really important to try to practice playing with a mask, because visual cues and sniffs and those things that we're so, are so automatic with us, aren't the same with a mask on. You can't breathe as well, but you can't, you can't lead as well, especially like in chamber music. Sound can seem muffled too, so you need to get used to playing with a mask. Don't forget to breathe. take deep breaths, go easier on yourself, and know that, this has been a long struggle. Not all of us have been able to, we can't work from home very easily. I mean, we're teaching maybe on Zoom, and the sound is so pathetic that it's really difficult to adapt. And this may continue for a while, but be sure to go as slowly as you need to, and to back off if you feel anything that's acting up, any kind of aches or pains. I see there's like a whole bunch of things in the chat. So maybe we could, if Mike, you could kind of administer, if people want to put their hands up or whatever and ask a question, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Janet, I've been monitoring the questions, and I think a lot of them were comments. The one question I think that was answered by another delegate, but also maybe you could speak on, is about the surgery for, where is it? Ulnar nerve entrapment. Do you have any thoughts or experience about that surgery, and whether the recovery is a concern?
Any recovery is a concern. Anytime anybody has to, if they have to cut in, that's gonna possibly include some scar tissue that will change things. So any surgery is a concern. Carpal tunnel surgery has been very successful for musicians. It's really not a huge thing that they just have to relieve that tunnel. The ulnar nerve surgery is a little more complicated because they actually have to move the nerve. But if you have to have that surgery, I would definitely ask around and make sure that the person has had numerous experiences doing this, and that they have someone that's really, really good with physical therapy afterwards, and be really relentless about doing your exercises to kind of slowly get that back. But to not do it can be very detrimental, because a nerve injury can become totally chronic and cause nerve damage. So you definitely don't want that.
Yeah, Janet, maybe in interest of time, maybe 2 or maybe 3 more questions, and then I believe your contact information is with your information that we have on the website. So if anybody wants to contact you directly, can they do that?
Oh yeah. I mean, if they want to, also they can go to janethorvath.com, and there's several other seminars on there and videos. But also I do private sessions for people that are hurting and need a eyeball to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to help if I can.
Okay. So are there questions in the chat, Naomi, or anybody have one that they want to raise their hand about?
I think the chat's been pretty much addressed, but unless if there's somebody who put something in the chat that didn't think that their issue got addressed in the chat, raise your hand. But otherwise, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a hand going up anywhere.
I see someone said they're a Frisch-Dennig fitter, and the idea of customizing by lifting the chin rest is also to be able to not need a shoulder rest. That's right. Along with finding the right shape to fit one's jaw. That's true. And that's, everybody has a different jaw shape. Yeah, it's really important to go out there and seek what's available to help make it easier to hold your instruments and play your instruments. I had a luthier once. I took my cello because it was really humid and hot like it is today, and I wanted him to take the strings down. The bridge was too high. That happens with cellos. And he says, well, if I go lower, that's viola height. And I thought, well, does that make me a lousy player? Does that make me a worse cellist because I'm trying to make it easier for myself? No. So, we should make it easier whenever we can.
Well, thanks so much, Janet. We really appreciate you being here. I'm sorry we got the time goof up there, but I think everybody really appreciates the time that you've put into all these thoughts that you've had about this and your experiences over the years with this as well. So we really appreciate you coming back to ROPA again. I think the last time was about 10 years ago, I think. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And my other soapbox is hearing protection. I would have, loved to have spent some time on that. So maybe another time we can do that. But do protect your ears. Thank you very much again for inviting me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
All right, folks, it is 5 till 1. I don't want to deny us a break here, so I think we'll take a 10-minute break and come back at 1:05 or 2:05. I'm sorry, 2:05 Eastern Daylight Time. So take a 10-minute and we'll see you at 2:05. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Our first order of business this afternoon will be the approval of the 2020 conference minutes. That will be followed by the treasurer's report and presentation of the 2021-22 budget. And that will be followed by discussion, reading of the resolutions that will be put to the group today. Once we have gone through the resolutions, made any edits or additions or anything that we need to do, those of you who are not delegates may be excused, and we will do the voting at the very end with only those who are eligible to vote, which is our delegates. Did I miss anything there, Naomi?
No, I think that sounds
Okay.
good. Are we also taking nominations today, or is that tomorrow?
Nominations, I believe, today's Tuesday. I believe nominations are tomorrow.
Yes.
My master schedule up here. Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. All right. Yeah, that'll be at the end of the day tomorrow. There's the nominations. All right.
Okay, so the minutes, are you ready to go to the minutes?
Yes, Karen. I was just going to say, Karen Sandines, ROPA's.
Hi. I did send out, notice that you should look at them in advance. I sent the link out. I'm going to be showing them up here on screen, and I did find a mistake I have to fix already. But we're just going to go through the minutes. You can pull them up on your own device. I've sent the link out in the chat, and so you can do that. Or I'm going to do a screen share right now and pull it up. Let me see, right here. And I did notice, I got to hide this, I don't want this, that I did have a date wrong here on page 2. I did fix this one. But I am open to suggestions for anything to change. I can scroll up here. It'd probably be easier on your own device to go through it. Whatever is most convenient.
And again, this list of orchestras here are those who registered and answered roll call on the first day. Is that correct?
Well, some were missed roll call, but these are the ones that were in attendance for the full thing.
Okay.
Okay. Check and make sure your orchestra is represented in the proper category. Okay. I don't know how fast or slow to scroll. Proceedings. Did people have a chance to look at these minutes? Yes, no. This is always so slow. Okay.
Karen?
Yeah.
I don't think I saw Central City Opera on the list up above. I believe we were there for the full time.
Okay, are you associate member? Central City. Okay, you were there the whole time last year. Okay. Thank you for checking that. Great. Come down here. This is the roll call. That is who actually was there at roll call. Yeah, Brooke.
Yeah, I'm not listed. Opera Philadelphia isn't there, and I was at the ROPA conference last year.
Were you already a member then?
Yes.
Okay, and Opera Philadelphia and full member?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. Yeah, Brooke again.
Yes.
I saw that your hand was up again.
Oh, no, I didn't. I need to lower it. Sorry.
Okay, okay. Thank you for checking that for me. It's a lot of orchestras, guys. It's great. Roll call. President's Harris address. Yeah, Lisa.
So do you need to change back on that roll call part? Do you need to change that number? No. Go down, go down, go down. Keep going. Keep
Yeah,
going.
the
Right
roll,
there.
the roll call. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that would be 10 associate members, 74, and
Yeah.
that would be 84. Thank you. Thank you for doing math for me. Okay, thank you. Okay, Boise Philharmonic. If I'm going too fast, let me know. Okay, these were all the resolutions. They were posted in here as approved. So I'm going to skip past the resolutions because they were cut paste. Nominations. President. I think that's all. Member at large positions were elected by acclamation. Rochelle and Jane. And audit report, are those the proper members of the audit committee from last year? I believe it is.
One correction.
Tell me.
It's Sarasota Orchestra.
Oh, thank you. I will do that. Okay. Thanks.
I had a question, please.
Tell me.
Could you, is it Tacoma Symphony or Symphony Tacoma?
It's Symphony Tacoma now.
Okay, under the approval of the 2019 minutes, on page, it's right above the resolution number 1, approval of the approval of the 2019 minutes. Yeah, right there.
Thank you. Good
Yeah.
job. Bravo, thanks.
Sure.
You guys are so smart. Okay, I'm coming back up here. Okay, so that's that. Anything else? Mike, how much more time would you like to give this?
Are there any further additions?
One more thing, please.
Yes, Sharon.
I don't know. Okay, so looking at page 11, it's the top of the last page.
Okay.
Thursday, July 23rd. Is that the correct date?
No, it isn't. Okay, thank you. That would be the 30th, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
And we ran this by the board and they didn't see it either.
Yep.
So,
Eagle eyes.
yeah. Okay, I'm ready to, I'm gonna fix that one thing, ready to call it.
Yep. Anyone else have anything that they see in this?
Karen, did you got that thing on page 4, right? With the line break?
Line 4.
No, page, can you go back to page 4 for just a second?
Yeah, let me see, to do page 4. Where would that be?
Under resolution number 2.
Okay.
after the italicized word racism, is there a line break then? So that the next text is on a separate line?
Oh, sure. Yep, I can do that.
Karen, I have one. If you could scroll up, you had Monday, July 27th. Let's see.
Okay, that was the right date, Monday, July 27.
Is that correct?
I think, yeah, last year it was Monday, July 27.
Excuse me, thank you.
And I needed to change it here because I had the wrong thing there as well. So, okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay,
I move we approve the minutes as corrected.
Okay, wait, I heard, who's,
Sorry,
yes,
Chloe, I don't think I'm on here. And if you go up to, yeah, I'm not in there.
Oh,
Wow.
what?
You're punishing me for skipping yesterday.
You need to get rid of that extra and then
I
before
will-
Steve Wade.
I will take care of that. And there's no, okay.
No, that's correct because she's finishing the list of mals and then moving on to the delegate at large.
Yeah, you can leave that and there.
You leave the and.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I had one more question, please.
Yeah, Sharon.
Page 4, I don't know if you already addressed this, but page 4, section 4, there's a line break under nominations shall be made. Yeah, right there.
There. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Leading tone.
Aaron?
Yes, Katie.
Also under, just below where you were.
Yeah.
Just before resolution 2, without the need of balloting.
Yeah, it should be just one period instead of 3 dots. Got 3 there.
Okay. Huh.
And then should that be a period instead of comma?
I think it's a period.
No, it's a comma, isn't it? Oh, you're right. It's a it is a period.
That might, the 3 dots might be there because this is a quote from the
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
from the bylaws, and so it just to show that the whole section isn't included.
Can you check on that over time and then we can, is that okay if we make that correction after she discovers that?
A friendly correction later, sure. I think that.
Yeah, okay. I'll just leave the 3 dots there for now because I thought that's how it was, but that's okay.
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes as corrected.
That's Beverly, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
And that's Lisa, got it. I like it how the Zoom tells me who's talking, that's great. Okay, I guess we just raise our hands, all in favor? That's Mike's job.
Yeah, just as you know, if people will go down to reactions on your Zoom menu down there, if you go to reactions, you'll see raise your hand, but you'll also see a yes and no. If you click yes and no, it will tally right above the chat area there. So in other words, if I put yes, you should see the 5 there, see where people's hands and the numbers are going in. That's a way we can vote. So we can just do it just like that.
Okay.
What if I saw one more thing?
We can fix that too.
We've already called, well, we've got a second, we're in the process of voting. I would say we'll have to add an additional friendly addition after this.
Okay.
Sharon, tell me what you saw and I can take care of it.
Page,
Could you do this
page
later?
6.
Okay, yeah, let's take the vote now, and I'd be happy to change it. Let me see, I'll do the
We
screen
have
share.
something going, so let's finish it.
Thank you.
Yep. So all those in favor of accepting the 2020 ROPA conference minutes, vote yes. If you don't like them, vote no. And put those in your reactions. Click on your reactions and choose yes or no.
Please stick to using. Please stick to using yes or no. Yeah, don't hit the other buttons.
Yeah, yes or no.
Yeah, if, by the way, if you are someone's official delegate this week, yes, you are allowed to vote. If you are a full member.
Sorry, I don't have yes or no as an option on my reactions. for
It's
some
not.
reason.
It's not in the reactions. It's in the. If you go to participants, if you go to that screen, that's where they are. Not in the reactions.
The green check is a yes, and
Got
like
it.
the red down is a no.
Got that now.
I think just as a helpful hint, some of us might have a different version of the Zoom meeting. And
I see that.
My reactions do have the yes in it. So
Yep.
it might just be a different version of the meeting.
But can we see those in the same way? Because we have 73 participants and right now. We're only seeing 40 yeses. So if it does it on, I don't think it's going to compile both of them, Mike.
Okay, well, would you rather me just do a poll real fast?
Yes, I would.
Okay. That'll take me a couple minutes here to set it up, but I will do so.
I did it under reactions and I'm seeing myself on the list of participants voting yes.
While you're setting that up, should we go ahead and start the resolutions and we can vote on the minutes before we vote on the resolutions at the very end?
We're gonna do the finance report next.
So why don't we jump into that so that we don't lose more time? Is Matt
Yeah.
here?
And Teresa, yeah, go ahead and respond for Pasadena if you're the alternate delegate, yes.
Can I suggest one other thing? Are you with me here? Let's see. Before I do this, I could suggest also at the conference, we do a voice vote. If we say all those in favor say yes, you may unmute yourself and say yes. And then we say those not in favor can unmute themselves and say no.
That's not equitable, unfortunately. Not everybody's mic is accessible.
Can everybody do a thumbs up?
All right, I will do a poll.
How about just raising your hand if you want to vote yes?
Also, not everybody's camera is accessible, I'm afraid.
Okie dokie.
Okay, well, if I create a poll, will everybody be able to do the poll?
I believe so.
Okay, let's go there. Give me a few minutes. There we go.
You know, if we do one more of these virtual conferences, we'll get this all worked out. Yikes.
I'm seeing some people who maybe haven't clicked yes, but are actively in the video. So if you want to try to click yes so we can see if you've done it, that would be helpful. Yeah, there you go. A bunch of people just did.
And Mike, for the sake of time, I'm happy to move forward with the financial report.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. We can do this in a few minutes. Go ahead.
Oops, I don't want to leave.
Okay. Okay. Mike, do we want to have the audit committee start that portion?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I will turn that over to them.
Are you ready to go?
Yes, thank you.
On behalf of the audit committee, based on our meeting last night, we found that all the finances to be accurate to the best of our knowledge and recommend the approval of the budget and the financial report. And we also want to appreciate the decision by the executive board to reduce the dues by 50% for the next 2 years and encourage all the ROPA orchestras to either catch up or keep up. Thank you very much.
Nora, can you tell me who's on the committee, please?
It's Carmen and Karen and I.
Okay, and you're the chair?
I guess.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to first thank everyone and all of the delegates for all the work that you guys put in to making this work, and also for being able to pay your dues in a very difficult year. I'm much appreciative of all the work that you have done to be able to do so, particularly those orchestras that have not been able to work this year, or in those orchestras that do not receive help in payment of dues from their locals. So thank you so much for making all of that work this year. As has been said before, the board has recognized the burden that paying dues has been on the players, particularly those that have not been working, and also the fact that we have been able to save money from not having in-person conferences. So we, as a board, have decided to use the savings toward actually covering some of the dues so that we can offer 50% dues for the next 2 years. So normally dues payments are $700 plus ROPA ERF of $100. And this last year we were able to reduce the dues by a third. So that was at $475 plus $100 for ERF. And this next 2 years, it will be $350 for dues plus the 100 ERF, for 350 plus 100, so a total of 450. So that's what your orchestras will need to pay for the next 2 years. We have also decided to waive all of the late fees, and also to not expel anyone for non-payment until the 2023 conference. So we acknowledge the burden that this has on some of the orchestras and want you to be able to catch up by that time. So we're giving you a period of the next 2 years to help catch up for that. So I just wanted to provide all of that information up front. The second thing I wanted to say is that I did create 3 reports: a cash balance reconciliation report, a financial report, and the 2021-22 budget report. And all 3 documents are loaded on the ROPA web page for your reference. So feel free to go there to look at those documents. And if you have any questions, of course, reach out to me. And I'm going to, just on this call, walk a high-level detail over the budget that we have for next year. And I'll just pull that up and share the screen here. Okay, can you all see this document?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so this is the ROPA budget for this upcoming year. And I'll just give a little bit of a walkthrough on some of the details. As you'll see here, our income consists of our bank interest, which was very, very minimal last year at only $13 or so. Usually it was in the past over $100, but given the interest rates, we have put that at $13. Our dues payments, again, this is the 50% reduced dues, so it's smaller than normal, will be around $38,500. Usually.
Oh, no.
Come back, Matt.
You froze for a second.
Cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, maybe.
We can.
Now we can.
That's good. We hear you now.
Matt, maybe try turning your video off.
I'm going to stop sharing. Do you think
Yeah,
that
I don't know what happens if you do that.
I'm going to stop sharing. Maybe, Mike, do you want to share? Maybe that,
Oh,
or someone else can share that document. That might be better for my
let's see if I have
bandwidth.
it. I didn't have it up in my computer. It'll take me a
For Karen?
I think if Matt, if you share your screen, but turn your video off, it'll save your bandwidth. Sharing your screen shouldn't take much more.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's worth trying to see if it'll save your share, but not your own personal.
Okay, let me try that.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, so I was don't know what everyone heard, so I'll just go back to what I was saying. This is the budget for this upcoming year. I have the income and expenses all detailed out here for what we anticipate. The bank interest amount, very small number, $13, given the current interest rate that we have to deal with. Our dues amounts, we are anticipating $38,500. This is, again, a half dues amount. So we are expecting a smaller dues amount for the next 2 years. And in order to make up for that, we are leveraging, as you can see on the next line item, savings from our virtual, from not having in-person conferences. So we put together this $17,887 amount to create a total income of $56,400, which balances out with the expenses for next year as well. So again, this accounts for the reduced dues amounts, but and we're leveraging the savings that we had in previous years to make up for that. I did want to mention here that these dues amounts only work if the orchestras pay the dues. We know that actually this year we still we are yet to receive about $6,000, a little bit more than $6,000 in dues of orchestras who have not paid. There are about 11 orchestras who have not been able to pay yet. And some of those orchestras, at least 3 of them, have not paid in the last 2 years, actually. So I'm still on top of this. This is monies due and owed to ROPA. And those payments are still expected from all of you. So I will continue to reach out to you for those payments. But I did just want to point out that these amounts, these dues payments only work if we receive the dues from you guys. So we'll continue to work on that next year.
Matt, I just want to point out a couple questions about the savings from virtual conference. They're wondering, how does savings become income in the chat?
Yeah, we just needed to come up with a number to account for balancing our expenses and making the income and expenses balance out. So we just leveraged that amount to do the books that way.
Are you saying that's money from our savings that we're putting into the budget as money for us to use for this coming year?
That is my understanding. Mike, do you have anything to add there?
That's basically it. We've collected more money than we spent the last 2 years. So we are allocating a number to go back into the budget from the following year that was collected previously, but not used because we did not have a virtual conference.
So this is savings from the previous virtual conference that is now going to move forward.
This year and the year before.
Does the income, does it need to show which account it's coming from, just for officially? Does this it's savings from or withdrawal from a certain savings account or something like that?
We only have one savings account.
Should it be credited here in the budget, or?
You could put Wells Fargo savings account.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can add, if we need to add that in, I can add that in. I'll just continue with the expenses for now. Conference expenses are significant. We are just leveraging the previous budgets that we have leveraged prior to the virtual conferences, and those are around 22,000. So we put that in here. The honorarium amounts have been the same for many years, so those really nothing there. The officers are paid the rates that you see here for the services that they do, as well as our leading tone editor, our webmaster, and our social media coordinator. So those are the amounts that are annually paid out to them. Also have the hotel line item here, and that's for hotel in addition to the conference. So the mid-year board meeting, and Mike travels to several players conferences as well. So that's what that is accounted for here. Leading tone expenses are going to be greatly reduced from previous years because we are printing much less. So this number accounts for that. And everything else you can see here are just standard line items for our expenses. So the total of the expenses is $56,400, which we made sure would equal our income for last year by adding in the savings from the virtual conferences. So this is the budget that we propose to all of you and are asking for approval from. Any questions or comments here?
Dennis is raising his hand. Dennis?
Yeah. Dennis, do you want to?
I would like to see that line item savings from virtual conferences, change so that it reflects where the money's coming from. So as you were talking about, showing that it's coming from a bank account or savings or whatever. Savings account, I mean. You talked about doing that. I'd like to see it.
Oh, make the actual change.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in a PDF right here, and I would have to switch computers to get to another one. I'm not able to do that right now unless I log off and call back in.
So can we say that savings from virtual conferences from Wells Fargo ROPA checking account, ROPA savings account? Would that be sufficient? What do you think?
You asking me?
Yeah, Dennis.
Oh, sorry. A lot of words there.
Yeah.
I think if you just say,
Could just say Wells Fargo savings.
yeah, from Wells Fargo savings.
Yeah.
Okay, if I need to make that now, I need to get off of the Zoom and rejoin on another computer. Is that what you'd like for me to do?
If you do it later, will you be sending it out?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
it is all going to be loaded to the web portal.
this will all be in the conference documents.
That's good for me.
Can I, oh, sorry. Can I suggest that it say moved from Wells Fargo's, moved from savings?
Sure.
Or applied from Wells Fargo savings. Yeah.
One could also say carryover from previous year's surplus.
Ooh.
That's exactly what it is.
So just indicate that.
Yeah.
Those words, awesome.
That's kind of what savings from virtual conference is, but it shouldn't, savings is confusing with savings account.
Can you repeat that again? I'm just wanting to make sure I get it word for word. Carry over from?
Carry forward from previous year's surplus.
Yeah.
Okay, I will make that change and load the document, replace the document on the website currently with this change. Any other comments?
It looks like Rick Bayshore has his hand up. And Dennis, I'm not sure if you finished, but your hand is still up.
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah. Hey, sorry. So I'm new to the ROPA thing, so obviously I don't want to cause any trouble or anything, but I'm just curious why not to harp on this line item, but if this is a budget, then why is that line even necessary? I mean, if you remove it, then the income obviously would be less than the expenses, but if this isn't a statement of assets, then that's not really necessary, I guess. And if you really wanted it to balance out better, then why not just reduce the expense line item of conference down to what we would estimate the expenses to be, something similar to what they were last year?
Because they will be more this coming year. That's why we wouldn't do it. Then we would be showing, deficits in many line items. This is basically our guesstimate and what we plan to spend in the coming year.
Okay, so the conference then is for next year's conference, not this year's
Yes,
conference.
yes, and
Okay.
realize, and maybe this, everybody needs to hear and understand this. Because our conference is at the end of July, that's like within the first month of our fiscal year. And many of the expenses for an annual conference come in April, May, and June. And then the final payments are made in August, and in July and August. So our conferences are paid by and large in 2 fiscal years. Part of it's paid in 1 fiscal year and part of it's paid in the second. And this is kind of a headache, but that's where we have been for a number of years. Matt and I have actually discussed about maybe moving our fiscal year to maybe like September 1st or something, so that we could completely close out a conference in 1 year. But that's been a discussion that we've had. But our budgeting and stuff, part of it gets paid in 1 fiscal year, part of it gets paid in the other.
So I guess the question then is, if we've been running surpluses for the last year or two because of the virtual conferences, then what's the problem with approving a budget this year that runs a deficit?
You could do that. We just wanted to show that we wanted to be in good faith, show everyone that we were using that surplus money for the budget coming up, and not just putting it away. We wanted to show that it's actively coming back into covering our expenses for this year.
Sure, and I guess that's why I think the reason why it's just causing confusion among some of the members is because normally when you have a budget, it's income versus expenses within a given year. And believe me, I completely understand the whole issue. I mean, I don't know if you guys are on cash or accrual accounting systems, but I understand the difference between the two. I understand how it can cause issues, especially when your biggest expense straddles 2 years as it does. But yeah, I was just going to say, if in addition to the budget, if you had a statement of assets which shows clearly that you have this money in the bank that is from leftover, basically from running surpluses for a couple of years, I think that would help explain to everybody why you would necessarily run a deficit for this year, and that way you wouldn't need this extra line in which people are like, what is that? Savings? How is that income? That sort of thing. Anyway, I'll mute myself now, and
Yeah,
that's all I need to say.
That information is on one of the other documents that Matt mentioned. We didn't put it in here for brevity, but it is available. It shows exactly, the surplus income that we are currently carrying.
Yeah, and just to mention, I did prepare this initially without that line item, and we did have the different income and expenses did not balance out, but I was provided the direction that we needed to get that to balance out. So this is the solution that we came up with. But so that's the edit that I made from yesterday. So
yeah, that was my call, basically to show everyone that the extra money that's been that your orchestras have paid over the last 2 years is coming back into our expenses and being used for our expenses, and didn't just fly out the window.
Real quick, Matt, I just emailed you a Word document of the budget. Could you pull that up from your email and show that so that we could edit it for proper voting on an amended budget? I sent it to the executive board.
yeah, let me see if I can. I don't have Word on this computer, so.
Okay. Can another board member, so we can edit it?
I will try.
Okay. Or Google Docs will work fine too, actually.
Okay, I can do Google Docs.
If you open it, just where it says open with Google Docs at the top.
Matt, I've got it if you'd rather.
Let's see if the formatting came out.
I've got it. I think I've got it in Word.
Nope, it's working.
Yeah, this is working.
Whew. Can you add an S to dues above that? I think I deleted it when I was doing formatting. Thank you.
Are we ready for a motion?
I think so.
Is it just 1 year's surplus or is it 2 years? Because if it's 2 years surplus, that's plural possessive because it's, yeah, is that correct?
Correct.
More than 1 year? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's clearer too. And when we go over the other financial documents, it'll show.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to move that we approve the 21-22 budget as amended.
Second.
Oh yeah, we need another poll maybe.
It's all set to go when we're ready.
Okay. Let me just click on polls and find it there.
Yep.
It'll come up.
As we've already had much discussion without a motion, I'm going to assume that we're good now and I can launch a poll.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing if that is okay with everyone.
Yep.
Okay.
So I believe the poll is launched. Looks like there's numbers coming in.
Mike, I don't think you let it run long enough.
Oh, I haven't done anything.
Can everyone else see the poll result?
Yes. Yeah, I think I messed it up. I think I clicked the wrong thing.
Yeah, you okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Juggle stuff.
Yeah.
We ran into this last year and I forgot to bring it up. Co-hosts are not able to vote. And so.
Do we need to co-host yourselves?
For those of us who are delegates.
Yeah.
Yes.
I need to do that.
I think that means just Naomi and I can remain co-hosts.
Okay. Katie, you're a delegate, correct?
I'm trying to figure out how to un-co-host myself.
I'm trying to figure out the same thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm able to do it.
Yeah. Mike's going to take care of it.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna take care of it. Naomi doesn't vote. Matt, you're not a delegate this year?
No, I am a delegate, but I don't see how. Oh, there I go. Thanks.
Lisa. Kendra is not a delegate. Katie, are you a delegate? Katie,
I am.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. Why won't it open you?
You know, I think I'm still checked green from last time, from the last vote.
Karen is not. Bev, I've done.
While
there we go.
While Mike is taking care of that, I just want to clarify for the chat. The previous yes vote that we did is no longer. We're going to do a poll for that. Okay, so this is.
I've got a poll set up. You're talking about for the minutes?
Right. A couple of people are chatting in the chat about the minutes. I just want to clarify that that is not a vote that we actually took. We are going to currently have another poll right after we do this budget vote.
Right, thank you.
Okay,
Is
there we go.
everybody freed up now in the board that needs to vote?
Yes.
I got to vote.
Not me.
Oh, Steve.
And there were a couple of delegates who are actually voting for a couple different orchestras. Not sure how we want to handle that with the poll.
Yeah, I don't think,
Kendra, I will suggest that if the vote is close, we can deal with it. If the
Yeah.
vote is not close, I don't think it will matter.
so far this looks okay. Does anyone else need to vote? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. The vote is closed. So we have approved the ROPA budget for 2021-22. All right. Thank you, Matt. And thanks everybody for your suggestions and being able to see. We want to be sure that everybody understands what's going on. Shall we vote to approve the minutes real quick? Whoop, wrong one. Okay.
Can I make a motion to approve the minutes from the 2020 conference?
Thank you, Lisa.
Second.
And who is that? I'm sorry.
That's Kendra.
Kendra, okay.
When you motion in second, go ahead and say your name with it so Karen can keep track for our records.
Lisa Bressler, may we make a motion? I would like to make a motion to approve the 2020 conference minutes.
Lisa, can you clarify that those are as amended?
Okay. Lisa Bressler, I would like to make a motion to approve the amended 2020 conference minutes.
And then
seconds.
Kendra, I'm going to interrupt you. If you're not a delegate, can you second?
Oh yeah, I guess not.
Second, Casey Bozell, seconds. I love doing that.
I need to see, my poll just disappeared. I need to get it back. How do I get it back? I didn't vote yet.
I don't know.
Oh, wait, I got it. Never mind.
It's coming back again.
Okay, folks, just to clarify, we're going to use the polling part of this rather than the yes click.
Yep.
At the very bottom, there now is a new button that says polling. It looks like a bar graph. Make sure you're using that instead of the yes check.
Yeah, when you click on that, you should see approval of 2020 ROPA conference minutes. And then you should, for this one, you should have had the other one up. Yeah, conference minutes, okay.
And again, I only voted once because I only got one poll, but I have two.
I don't know how we can, if you're representing 2 orchestras, I don't think you can vote twice with the polling system.
You
That's
cannot.
fine.
And so what we'll do is if it is close, we can talk to those folks who represent more than one orchestra and figure that out. Okay, but right now we're unanimous, so I don't think it's an issue. So I think you can go ahead and close this one.
Okay.
So just to clarify for me again, Lisa Bressler made the motion, Casey Bozell did the second.
Correct.
And then for the budget, Bev made the motion and Kendra seconded, even though she shouldn't. Or did we do?
I think Lisa did. I thought somebody else came by and did that. Lisa.
Okay,
Bressler.
I did.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm just getting that down.
All right. Naomi, it's time.
Oh, God. Okay.
Okay, really quick, because I know we're short on time, I'm going to run down the process that we've used for the resolutions this year. In reaction to what happened at last year's virtual conference, we listened to your feedback, and this morning we held a legislative, first we listened to your feedback and we published the draft resolutions in the leading tone. So I hope everybody had an opportunity to read them and review them. Then this morning, the legislative committee met. We went over all of the resolutions.
It was an open meeting too.
Open meeting. And we have some recommended changes to those resolutions. So the way this is going to work is we are going to read each resolution. We will then, and Paul, jump in if I'm doing this wrong, but we will read each resolution and then we will entertain a motion to consider the resolution. And at that point, I will present the committee's recommended changes to each resolution. I will tell you that most of them are housekeeping changes. There are a handful of substantive changes, which we'll explain. And then there will be discussion on that amended resolution. And then we will call the vote. And I think, Mike, we can just take the vote. If there's anybody here who's not a delegate, can we just, or not the person representing your orchestra, can we just trust you not to vote, please? I don't see anyone on my screen who's not a delegate. I can't see everybody, but.
Yeah. So resolution 1, that's the subject is resolution remembering Chris Durham, founder of ROPA. Chris Durham resolution. And this is where Karen would read the resolution.
Yes.
Karen, you're muted.
What I'm reading to you is what was published in the leading tone.
Right. Karen.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to pull that up on the screen as well, so you can follow along.
Right. Naomi just explained that.
Okay. And here we go. Resolution number 1, subject resolution remembering Chris Durham, founder of ROPA. Chris Durham resolution. Whereas on August 22nd, 2020, Chris Durham, founding member of the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, passed away. And whereas Chris Durham was a violinist, unionist, contract negotiator, conservationist, family man, and friend to all. And whereas Chris Durham was a leader in the American Federation of Musicians of the United States and Canada, AFM, having been one of the youngest local vice presidents for Local 103 in Columbus, Ohio at the age of 25, and having worked in the Symphonic Services Division as negotiator and briefly as director since 1989. And whereas Chris Durham helped to found ROPA, served on the ROPA executive board, and attended every ROPA conference from 1984 to 2019. And whereas over the years, Chris Durham personally assisted many ROPA orchestras in the successful negotiations of their collective bargaining agreements, supported their labor actions, and was a champion of ROPA orchestras. And whereas Chris Durham was a friend, a mentor and friend to many of the approximately 6,000 musicians who play in ROPA orchestras. And whereas ROPA is grateful for Chris Durham's immeasurable contribution to the growth of unionism, solidarity, and the resulting increase in wages and working conditions for ROPA orchestras, and saddened by the loss of this formidable force in our industry. Therefore, be it resolved that the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, will remember Chris Durham as a founding member and key contributor to ROPA's mission, and be it further resolved that ROPA hereby expresses its condolences to Chris's wife, Lisa, and their son, Jacob, and to all who mourn his loss. And be it further resolved that ROPA pledges to honor Chris's memory as we work to fulfill our purpose, to promote the interests of our member orchestras and their musicians, to enhance communications among those orchestras, and with the Federation, its locals and conferences, and to pursue the general welfare and artistic well-being of our members, submitted by the ROPA Executive Board.
Right. So this resolution will need a motion. It does not need a second. because it's being submitted by the ROPA Executive Board.
And Karen, can you stop sharing your screen so I can share the amendments?
Okay, stop sharing. Got it.
So we need a motion to approve before.
Motion to approve resolution number 1.
Who's it
I
coming
think we need a motion to entertain, not to approve, but to
discussion.
Present. A motion to present so we can open discussion.
Right.
Motion to present resolution 1 for discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right.
All right, so I'm going to share the legislative committee's recommendations for resolution number 1. The legislative committee met and discussed resolution number 1 and recommend its adoption with 2 minor housekeeping changes, which is the removal of 3 commas as shown here on my screen. And if anyone has any discussion, now's the time.
Can you, it's pretty small. Can you highlight the 2 changes?
Yes, here's what I can do. It's here, here, and here, removing those commas. That's it. Is there any discussion on this resolution?
Can I make a motion to approve the changes to resolution 1? May I?
Yes, so I think what we're doing is once this discussion is closed, we'll move to approve the
Okay, I took the silence as approval, sorry.
So
Okay, this is Paul, your parliamentarian. What you can do is you've presented the amendments to the body of the assembly. At this point, it's been open for discussion. There's no discussion. So you put it to a vote as amended, but as amended, and it's thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah.
May I do that now, or are we discussing?
So if there's no, I think we've asked if there's any discussion and haven't heard any. So I guess now we can open it for a vote, thumbs up or thumbs down on the resolution as amended.
Right.
So Mike, you want to launch that poll?
I will. And you know what? I think come on, poll.
Paul,
Okay.
before we start the poll, do we need a motion and a second for each one?
No, it's already been read. Once the secretary reads it, it's on the floor of the meeting. Now, if there is a committee, if it's by the board, it doesn't need a second.
Okay.
It's open for debate. At that point, the legislative committee gives its report on the resolution, which is the amendments. And so you put that out there like that and read it. And now you open it up for discussion. And the delegates can speak in favor of it, oppose it, propose amendments to the entire resolution, propose amendments to the legislative committee amendments. And once that has been taken care of, and there's no further discussion, then the chair puts the matter to a vote.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Okay. Now here's the next, it may be a potentially glitch. We'll see. I created the poll for all 7 resolutions. So I believe what can happen is we can vote as we go on each resolution and then submit the total poll with the end of all 7. In other words, if I do this, you're going to see all 7 resolutions. and how you would vote for those. Is that what I'm
Okay.
saying here?
Yeah, I see where you're going with this. Okay, yeah, you can do that. Everybody needs to understand that what the chair is going to do is dispose of the vote for all of the resolutions and then declare each vote, each resolution separately at the end of it all.
Right. And what I'm
declare
seeing,
each either as adopted or not adopted, depending on the vote.
what I'm seeing right now is somebody put in a vote, or two people put in votes, and it went to all seven questions.
So that's a technical problem with.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you might want to consider doing, and I know it's more work and.
Yeah,
it's a
I'm
little
just
time-consuming.
gonna redo it.
Would you like us to read resolution number 2 while you're doing that?
That'll be fine.
Be careful about that. Yeah. Postpone the vote. You're going to make it clear. You're going to postpone the vote on resolution number 1.
Okay, so we're going to resolution number 2. I need to close this up. Okay, resolution 2, subject, resolution condemning the management of the Colorado Springs Philharmonic for failing to bargain in good faith. Colorado Springs Philharmonic resolution. Whereas in April of 2020, the musicians of the Colorado Springs Philharmonic, members of the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, represented by Local 154 of the American Federation of Musicians of the United States and Canada, AFM, entered into a 5-year collective bargaining agreement, CBA, with the Colorado Springs Philharmonic Orchestra, CSPO, which included wages and working conditions that were fairly and lawfully bargained for. And whereas at the end of 2021 season, the CSPO abruptly and unlawfully canceled the CBA, leaving the musicians without work or pay and placing blame not on being able to present performances during the COVID-19 pandemic, despite having bargained return to work safety protocols, and with the full knowledge that venues were open with safety measures in place. And whereas the CSPO then planned to present performances and offered work to musicians of the Colorado Springs Philharmonic without the protections of the CBA and on a per service basis rather than fulfilling the guaranteed service minimum salary provided for in the CBA. And whereas on August 17, September 1, and October 2, 2019, Local 154 of the AFM filed grievances, and on March 5, 2021, Local 154 filed an unfair labor practice against the CSPO. And whereas on March 6, 2021, the AFM placed the Colorado Springs Philharmonic on the International Unfair List. And whereas on May 11, 2021, Region 27 of the NLRB informed Local 154 that it had found merit in the ULP charge, alleging unlawful unilateral changes in terms and conditions of employment and direct dealing with the musicians, and would be issuing a complaint against the CSPO absent settlement. And whereas a neutral arbitrator has been selected to decide whether the CBA was lawfully canceled, and in the meantime, the CSP has offered no work in the 2021 season to the musicians, even though the threat of the COVID-19 pandemic has been severely diminished, and the orchestra's primary concert hall is open without any restriction on audience capacity. Therefore, be it resolved that the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, hereby stands in solidarity with the musicians of the Colorado Springs Philharmonic and commends their fortitude in the face of adversity. And be it further resolved that ROPA hereby condemns the Colorado Springs Philharmonic Orchestra, CSPO, for using the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse to cancel the collective bargaining agreement, CBA, they agreed to, and to keep its musicians from earning a living during a global crisis. And be it further resolved that ROPA urges the CSPO to honor the CBA and bring the musicians back to work immediately. Submitted by Sarah Wilson, delegate, Colorado Springs Philharmonic, and the ROPA Executive Board.
All right. The Legislative Committee met and discussed resolution number 2.
You can do 1 and 2 now. I've got those done.
Okay, well, let's talk about 2 and then we can vote on both.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I believe
Yes.
Hi, Becca.
When we were discussing that this morning, I was listening, that Sarah Wilson agreed that Ann Rule's name would be put in as delegate and not hers.
Yes, Karen, we're gonna go over the changes right now. So what Karen Sandine was reading was the proposed language that was printed in the leading tone. And what we are now showing you is the changes that the legislative committee is recommending. And again, the legislative committee is recommending the adoption of resolution number 2 with the following changes. The main discussion this morning, aside from from correcting the name of the delegate, was making it clear that who we are referring to regarding the management or the musicians, that the use of the word Colorado Springs Philharmonic Orchestra was somewhat misleading and confusing. So we changed it to be management and musicians. And the other major change is the removal of the paragraph regarding Region 27's decision. We've been informed that that investigation has been reopened, so Rochelle has asked us to remove that language. And that's the strike through that you see here. So I would now open it up for discussion regarding the amendments, and if anyone has any questions, please speak up. Dennis. I see Dennis's hand up. Go ahead.
A very small point in the first paragraph. At the end of that paragraph, before the last semicolon, bargained for. I don't think you need the word for.
We discussed this in committee, and again, if there's a motion to remove that word, but I will explain that it's a term of art, bargain for wages, that it should be considered as the words bargain for as one verb, and that's why it's there. But we can, if there's a motion to take that word out, we certainly can do it.
I also just want to bring up the changes of the dates that were incorrect before. Those were corrected by the legislative committee.
Thank you, Kendra. Is there any other discussion regarding the proposed amendments? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I believe that we can now call the vote on resolution number 1 as amended, followed by the vote on resolution 2 as amended. So we'll start with resolution number 1, right, Mike?
Right.
Okay.
Where's the poll?
Hey. All right. I think I've got everything there.
Okay, this is Paul, may I make another suggestion that I think will help move things along? Because Mike, you're clearly tied down with.
Yeah, I just finished.
Yeah. May I suggest that the minutes reflect that the president has transferred the duties of the chair temporarily over to the legislative committee, and let the legislative committee basically dispose of the resolutions.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Yeah, let's do that. And that's how the minutes will be reflected. And then once the resolutions are done with, then the chair, the temporary chair, then transfers the chair back to you.
That sounds fine.
Got it.
Okay, so this one we're going to close. Okay, so we're ready for resolution number 1, correct?
Yes. All right, I'm giving people 5 more seconds.
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Okay, and resolution number 1 is adopted by 42 yes votes and 0 no votes. And we'll move on now to voting on resolution 2 as amended.
Now, if I can get back to that. Whoops, wrong one. Sorry. There we go.
All right, so voting is now open for resolution number 2. Five seconds. All right, let's go ahead and close the vote. The resolution passes with a vote of 38 yes and 0 no. Okay, Karen, do you want to move on to reading resolution number 3?
Yes. Okay. Okay, resolution number 3, there it is. Resolution commending Congress for passage of COVID relief legislation. FFCRA, CARES Act, and ARPA resolution. Whereas in March of 2020, a global pandemic swept the world, closing large performance venues and putting orchestral musicians out of work. And whereas the resulting lack of work for musicians exacerbated the failing health of the American Federations of Musicians and Employers Pension Fund, AFM-EPF. And whereas Congress acted quickly to pass the Families First Coronavirus Relief Response Act, I can't read, FFCRA, and the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, CARES Act, which together provided paid sick leave and increased unemployment insurance benefits, which were a lifeline to orchestral musicians. And whereas throughout 2020, the pandemic continued to keep our theaters closed, necessitating further relief. And whereas on March 11, 2021, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, which not only provided additional direct payments to unemployed orchestral musicians, such as increased unemployment compensation for traditional and mixed income earners, stimulus payments, and direct interest-free loans to artists and venues, but also provided an important and necessary solution to our pension crisis by providing for direct payments to struggling multi-employer pension funds like the AFM-EPF. And whereas members of the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, and International Conference of Symphony and Opera Musicians, ICSOM, rely on the solvency of the AFM-EPF for their retirement. And whereas members of ROPA and ICSOM, along with AFM staff, participated in multiple campaigns to support the passage of ARPA, and whereas the benefits of the FFCRA, CARES Act, and the ARPA are instrumental in helping orchestral musicians weather this difficult time, therefore be it resolved that the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, hereby thanks each and every musician who took time to contact members of Congress and encourage them to pass ARPA, and be it further resolved that ROPA commends and thanks AFM staff, including but not limited to Legislative Political Director Alfonso Pollard, for their hard work and tireless efforts in spreading the word about this important legislation. And be it further resolved that ROPA commends the United States Congress on the passage of the FFCRA, the CARES Act, and especially ARPA, which will have a positive impact on the lives of performing musicians and especially AFM members for years to come. Submitted by the ROPA Executive Board.
All right. The Legislative Committee met to discuss resolution number 3. We recommended the following changes to resolution number 3. For clarity, we recommended that the first paragraph, we replace the words "a global pandemic" with the more specific moniker, the COVID-19 pandemic, and also in the fourth whereas for clarity. We wrote out the name of the American Federation of Musicians of the United States and Canada in keeping with our required format. And also the names of the acts rather than just their acronyms. And fixed some commas and things. And that is the sum total of the recommended changes by the legislative board and, the legislative committee. And so I will now open it up for discussion. Is there any discussion on resolution number 3? Okay, do I have to ask 3 times, Paul?
Yep. It's an AFM custom practice.
Is there any discussion?
I would like to ask a question under FFCRA, CARES Act, and ARPA resolution. Should pandemic in the first line have a capital P?
This one right here where my cursor is pointing?
Yes.
We have decided for consistency that we will not capitalize pandemic when it comes after the word COVID-19, and that should be consistent.
I see. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I'd like to add, we discussed that and looked at some other articles in the media where it was the same consistency.
All right, last time, is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will ask for a vote to adopt resolution number 3 as amended.
Oh, where'd it go? Did it show up? I think it disappeared.
No, I got it. I'm seeing it.
You're seeing it? Okay. Well, for some reason, I'm not. Well,
I'm sharing my screen. That might help. Five seconds. Okay, you can close the poll. The resolution is adopted by a vote of 38 yes to 0 no. All right, Karen, can you please read resolution number 4?
Okay. Okay, let's find it. Okay, there it is. Okay, subject, resolution setting forth ROPA's work to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion amongst its members and in its mission. Diversity, equity, and inclusion resolution. Whereas systematic racism affects ROPA orchestras at every level, and whereas centuries of American orchestral culture has perpetuated racialized hierarchies in performance, education, and community outreach, and whereas at the 2020 conference of the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, which was held virtually, the conference delegates adopted a resolution pledging to form a ROPA diversity committee with the goal of exploring how ROPA can help address this systematic problem. And whereas this committee, the ROPA EDI work group, was formed during the 2021 season And whereas the ROPA EDI work group has defined its mission as the ROPA EDI work group strives to move ROPA forward in the areas of awareness, education, and activism for racial and cultural diversity. We will work and communicate together to recognize and counteract implicit bias, create a culturally diverse and equitable work environment, and promote systematic change within our industry. And whereas, oh geez, wait a minute. Okay. There we go. And whereas, where do we leave off? Okay, whereas the ROPA EDI work group has identified several goals, including becoming a central, reliable source for the benefit of all ROPA orchestras, recommending and helping to implement best practices of hiring musicians, music directors, administrators, and board members to effect change at every level, working with ROPA orchestras to achieve measurable ways of diversifying repertoire and programming, and targeting educational outreach and community programs. And whereas the ROPA EDI work group continues to meet to discuss ways in which ROPA can assist its member orchestras in engaging in this important work, therefore be it resolved that the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, hereby applauds and commends the work of the ROPA EDI work group and encourages participation and contribution from all of its members. And be it further resolved that the ROPA EDI work group is dedicated to addressing and counteracting the effects of these complicated histories and regressive practices with the goal of making the work environment of all ROPA orchestras a safe and equitable place. And be it further resolved that the members of the ROPA Executive Board pledge to support the work of the EDI work group and further its work in every possible way, submitted by the ROPA Executive Board.
Okay, thank you, Karen. The Legislative Committee met this morning and discussed resolution number 4 and recommended the following changes and recommends its adoption with the following changes. The first thing that we did was to be consistent in the order in which the words equity, diversity, and inclusion appear. As the committee calls itself, the ROPA Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, or EDI work group, we put the words in that order throughout the resolution. We also corrected some spelling and formatting issues. And we did make one substantive change to the last resolved paragraph. In order to emphasize the strong commitment that the board is making on behalf of the members of ROPA, we added the qualifier to the final resolved so that it now reads, be it resolved that the members of the ROPA Executive Board as the elected officials of ROPA pledged to support the work of the EDI work group and further its work in every possible way. The committee discussed that it was important to emphasize that the board, as stewards of the work of ROPA and as elected officials of the delegates, are making this work a priority and will give resources as needed to the EDI work group. And so I will open the floor for discussion on resolution 4 as amended. Is there any? Stephen.
Yeah, I'm kind of reacting to the term systematic racism. Is there a different term, or is there anything that we could use that, might imply, implicit bias or something? But absent really specifying certain laws, it just seems like it's a general and broad discussion that has a pretty strong connotation in it, and I wonder how other people might feel about that word.
Actually, it seems like an incorrect word. In this case, systematic rather than systemic.
Yes, it's supposed to be systemic racism.
That's what it says.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking about the very first whereas, correct?
Sorry, I said the word, but
I might have said systematic by mistake.
It's actually later in the third whereas at the end, it says systematic.
Yeah, that should be systemic.
Okay, so can I have a motion to make that amendment, please?
And do you want to make the motion?
I can't make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the change. This is Karen Parker.
Is there a second?
I second Lori and Jones, California Symphony.
Okay, so beyond that change in the third whereas, Stephen, did you have, I think it sounds like your comment goes beyond the difference between systemic and systematic. So let's, do you want to, am I correct in that?
But I guess also the word racism, I'm just curious to see how people feel about the impact of that word.
I feel it's relevant and it's exactly what it is.
I believe there are other systemic injustices, but that racism is of the utmost concern and suggest that it stay.
Is there any other discussion regarding the amended resolution number 4?
So excuse me, Naomi, are we going to change it to systemic?
So I've made that change, and Paul, do we need to vote on that and then vote on the rest, or can we?
Yeah, well, what you can do is say if there are no objections, we'll go ahead and make the change.
Yeah.
Are there any objections?
Are there any objections to the change from systematic to systemic in the third whereas? Are there any objections? Are there any objections? Hearing none, that change will be added to the amended resolution number 4. Is there any further discussion regarding the amended resolution number 4? Is there any other discussion regarding amended resolution number 4? Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's call the vote on adoption of amended resolution number 4. Five seconds. Okay, Mike, you can go ahead and close the poll. The resolution's adopted by a vote of 33 yes to 0 no. I'm taking a second. What's our quorum?
Should be a simple majority.
No, I mean, how many members do we have to have present?
There's nothing specified in our bylaws, so I'm referring back to Roberts would be a simple majority.
Yes, a simple majority of the number of registered delegates.
And those would be full member delegates. We have currently 84, is that right? Yeah, 84 full member delegates. So it would need to be 42.
So does that mean we have to have 42 participants in order to have a quorum, or we just?
We have 44 people in the room, so
They're not
But
all.
I don't count.
is eligible.
And they're not all full member delegates
Right.
either.
Right.
And somebody had also said that some of us they're here are representing two orchestras.
And we don't have a good way to, how many, I guess we could ask, verbally, how many are voting for two orchestras? Do we know that?
I think there was discussion that got us up to 6 delegates who are doing double duty so far in the chat.
Does that mean 12 votes possibly?
That means just 6 extra votes.
6, so there's, okay,
They're not all here.
right,
Right. I wasn't sure who had left.
right.
We've lost several people
Okay.
as we're over time.
Yep.
This is Paul. You may need to do a roll call vote. To
I
determine
don't,
quorum.
yeah, I don't see anything in our bylaws at all.
Absent, since this is a conference, it falls under convention rules. Absent any mention of a quorum, it's a majority of the registered delegates.
So in that case, we do not have a quorum right now because we do not have more than half of our orchestras in attendance. I don't believe.
Well, you need to take steps to determine the quorum. The common way is to do a roll call vote, and that takes time. But if you can think of another way to do this electronically, I mean, you could go on the honor system, and that those who are our delegates and authorized to cast a vote, please raise your hands. And then once that's done, or you can do it as a poll, and you can go on the honor system. And then once that is disposed of, then you see how many of you here are representing more than one orchestra. So there's that.
We just got a new person coming in the room. I don't know if she's been elected officially yet.
Is that Winnie?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I was online with her, yeah.
But somebody has raised a point of information about the quorum. So you need to find some way to determine the quorum. The most common way is to do a roll call.
Might I suggest that those people who are in the room who can vote for 2 orchestras, please either change your name or hold your hand up or something. Make yourself known who is in the room who can have 2 votes.
Yes, and don't count me as part of what's in the room because I'm an advisor. I'm not here to cast votes.
Right, and me and Mike and Karen as well.
And Kendra.
Beth Larson, are you saying that you are voting for 2 orchestras by raising your hand physically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Beth Larson, Chris Coyle, me.
And Lisa Bressler.
Lisa.
And is Leslie here? Lashinsky?
Not that I see.
Her picture is up, but I also have a feeling we haven't been getting all the people that are actually in the room voting on the last couple of things. So maybe
they don't need to vote. Yeah, they don't need to cast a vote. They just need to be present. Yeah.
Leslie, and then Karen Barker Farron is also double duty. She's West Virginia and Erie now, both. So that's 6 of us.
5,
6.
I have Beth Larson, Amanda Swain, Lisa Bressler, Leslie Lashinsky, Karen Barker, and who am I missing?
Chris Coyle.
Chris Coyle. Okay. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 participants in the meeting who are unable to vote. That's Kendra, myself, Mike, and Paul, correct?
And myself, Karen.
And Karen.
I believe Debbie Spangler left. She represents Oakland and Symphony Silicon Valley, but I'm the alternate for Symphony Silicon Valley, if that helps.
Hey, Todd, are you voting for Becca? Becca had requested that Todd fill in for her because she had to go teach.
I believe so, yes. Thank you.
Hey,
that'd be great.
I'm the alternate for Kalamazoo. Nora's still here. Nora had to leave. I am the alternate for Kalamazoo also. So you can use me for that.
So that gives you 3.
Okay, so 1. That means we can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We can add 8 and subtract 5 from the participants that we have here. So we have 48. Is that more than half?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then we have a quorum. We can keep going. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to blow it.
Oh, wait, I have to go. Sorry. No, I'm only kidding.
Lisa,
All
you
right.
must stay.
Karen, can you please read resolution number 5?
Okay, let's see.
So,
5.
one point of it, I have one question there on that.
Yeah.
So we're assuming that the person that's voting for 2 orchestras, or in one case, 3 orchestras, all those votes are the same, correct? Okay, just want to be sure that that's understood.
Has been up to until now. Okay. Fort Wayne, resolution number 5, resolution congratulating the musicians of the Fort Wayne Philharmonic on the restoration of their season. Fort Wayne Philharmonic resolution. Whereas when the pandemic erupted in the United States in March of 2020, the Fort Wayne Philharmonic, FWP, and its musicians, members of Local 58 of the American Federation of Musicians of the United States and Canada, AFM, were near an agreement for a successor collective bargaining agreement, CBA, after 10 months of bargaining. And whereas in April of 2020, the FWP withdrew its bargaining proposal, which included wage increases and other favorable conditions, citing changed circumstances due to the pandemic. And whereas in July of 2020, the FWP announced the furlough of all musicians effective August 31st, 2020, using the global pandemic as an excuse to suspend operations and attempt to diminish the pay and working conditions for the musicians of the orchestra. And whereas the FWP also threatened to cut musicians' health benefits, endangering their lives in the middle of a public health crisis. And whereas in September of 2020, the FWP presented a bargaining proposal which sought to completely undermine the size, quality, and professionalism of the orchestra. And whereas several unfair labor practices were filed in opposition to these unlawful practices by the FWP. And whereas the musicians of the Fort Wayne Philharmonic fought tirelessly against this effort to gut their livelihoods by bargaining in good faith, and engaging in rallies, pickets, and other job actions to raise awareness for this unjustified action by the orchestra's management. And whereas for the majority of the 2021 season, musicians remained on furlough without any pay. And whereas on May 1, 2021, a rally was held in Fort Wayne in support of the musicians, which drew huge crowds from Fort Wayne and all over the country. And whereas, as a result of the above actions, the parties returned to the bargaining table and were able to agree on terms of a 1-year contract. And whereas the FWP has now agreed to pay musicians for 28 weeks of work during the indoor season and 7 weeks in the summer, which is an increase in total annual weeks from the previous guarantee. And whereas the FWP also agreed to give musicians significant furlough offset payments after suffering through a year without pay, therefore be it resolved that the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, hereby stands in solidarity with the musicians of the Fort Wayne Philharmonic and commends their fortitude in the face of adversity. And be it further resolved that ROPA looks forward to the continued growth and prosperity of the Fort Wayne Philharmonic, submitted by the ROPA Executive Board.
Okay, thank you, Karen. The Legislative Committee met, and I will point out that delegate for the Fort Wayne Philharmonic, Dennis Fick, was in attendance. And so the first major change that has been made to this this resolution by the Legislative Committee was to add Dennis Fick as a co-sponsor of the resolution. The Legislative Committee recommends that resolution number 5 be adopted with the following amendments. First of all, in being consistent with the rest of our resolutions that refer to the pandemic, we have changed the moniker and called it the COVID-19 pandemic. On the request of Dennis, we've removed the paragraph regarding the Fort Wayne Philharmonic threatening to cut musicians' health benefits. We have clarified that the musicians remain on furlough for the entirety of the 2021 season. We have made some additional clarifying changes in the paragraphs as you see on your screen, and made some grammatical changes and dealing with commas and semicolons. And I will now open this up for discussion.
Yeah, Naomi, one other thing that we corrected, we removed 10 months of bargaining and just had made months of bargaining. That's in the very first whereas.
Thank you for that, Mike. Is there any discussion regarding the amended resolution number 5? Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I would call. Oh, hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Couldn't get my hand raised here. This is Dennis Fick, Delegate Fort Wayne.
Yes, hi.
I looked it up, the communication, and your original formulation of 10 months was accurate. So I looked that up since we talked this morning.
So would you like to keep the 10 months?
Well, I think it reads a little better, but I don't like to cause a lot of trouble. I've already caused enough.
Is there any objection to putting the number 10 back into the first paragraph? Is there any objection to putting number 10 back in the first paragraph? Is there any objection to putting the number 10 back in the first paragraph? Hearing no objection, we'll put it back and it will be part of the amended resolution.
Thank you.
And I will ask one more time if there is any further discussion regarding resolution number 5 as amended. And hearing none, let's call the vote on resolution number 5 as amended. Now you can put the poll up, Mike, sorry.
Yeah, it already is, I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay, we'll go 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. You can close the poll. The resolution is adopted with a vote of 31 yes to 0 no. Okay, Karen, please read resolution number 6. There's only 2 more.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
Karen, you're muted.
Okay, found it. Okay, Fort Wayne, we have completed that one. And now resolution number 6. Subject, resolution thanking the IMA Negotiating Committee and especially Deborah Newmark and Rochelle Skolnick for their tireless advocacy on behalf of musicians during the pandemic through their work on the IMA side letter agreement, IMA resolution. Whereas in March of 2020, a global pandemic swept the world, closing large performance venues and putting orchestral musicians out of work. And whereas many members orchestras of the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, thereafter wished to share both new and archived content through streaming platforms in order to keep their audiences, in order to keep their musicians working and in front of their audiences. And whereas the sharing of orchestral media content through streaming platforms is governed by the Integrated Media Agreement, IMA, which is negotiated between the American Federation of Musicians of the United States and Canada, AFM, and the Employers Media Group, EMG. And whereas members of the EMG expressed their desire for leniency on the terms of the IMA during the pandemic, and whereas after countless hours of negotiations and meetings with the AFM IMA Negotiations Committee, which includes AFM staff and rank and file musicians, including members of the ROPA Media Committee, an IMA side letter was developed which allowed orchestras to more widely create and distribute streaming content in exchange for guaranteed wages and benefits to musicians. And whereas AFM Symphonic Services Director and Special Counsel Rochelle Skolnick and AFM Director of Symphonic Electronic Media Deborah Newmark worked tirelessly to draft the IMA side letter, implement its terms, and get it ratified by many orchestras around the United States. And whereas the IMA side letter has allowed ROPA orchestras to provide work, wages, and creative outlets for their musicians during this difficult time, therefore be it resolved that the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, hereby applauds the work of the Integrated Media Agreement, IMA, Negotiating Committee in developing and agreeing to the IMA side letter, and be it further resolved that ROPA hereby and sincerely thanks Rochelle Skolnick and Deborah Newmark for their dedication and service to our musicians, submitted by the ROPA Executive Board.
All right. The Legislative Committee met to discuss resolution number 6. And the Legislative Committee recommends adoption of resolution number 6 as amended as follows. Again, we removed a typo of a second whereas in the first whereas paragraph. We remain consistent with our description of the COVID-19 pandemic, made a correction in the name of the Employers Electronic Media Association, and some comma and semicolon changes. And that's essentially how this was edited. So I'll open the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion on resolution number 6 as amended? Is there any discussion on resolution number 6? Is there any discussion on resolution number 6? Hearing no discussion on resolution number 6, so we'll call the vote to adopt resolution number 6 as amended.
That poll went invisible again, but you can see it.
I can see it.
There it is. I got it. Okay.
Five seconds. Okay, you can close the poll. The resolution number 6 is adopted with a vote of 31 yes and 0 no. All right, and finally, Karen, please read resolution number 7.
Here we go. Subject, resolution urging Congress to pass the PRO Act, protecting the right to organize, PRO Act resolution. Whereas on March 9, 2021, the United States House of Representatives passed the Protecting the Right to Organize, PRO Act, a bill which expands various labor protections related to employees' rights to organize and collectively bargain in the workplace. And whereas the PRO Act, if passed, would provide several important expansions to the federal labor law, which would benefit the union musicians of the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, such as unions would lawfully be able to collect contributions toward the cost of representation from non-members in right-to-work states. It would be unlawful for employers to coerce employees into attending anti-union meetings. Elections for union representation could occur at a place other than the place of, at a location other than the place of employment, including remotely and via the internet. And whereas the PRO Act would benefit all workers in the United States, which in turn would improve wages and working conditions for all, including members of ROPA. And whereas members of ROPA and the International Conference of Symphony and Opera Musicians, ICSOM, along with AFM staff, have supported the passage of the PRO Act through efforts such as phone banking and direct contact with Congress. Therefore, be it resolved that the Regional Orchestra Players Association, ROPA, hereby thanks each and every musician who took time to contact members of Congress and encourage them to pass the PRO Act. And be it further resolved that ROPA commends and thanks AFM staff, including but not limited to Legislative Political Director Alfonso Pollard, for their hard work and tireless efforts in spreading the word about this important legislation. And be it further resolved that ROPA urges the United States Senate to pass the PRO Act, which will have a positive impact on the lives of performing musicians and all working Americans, submitted by the ROPA Executive Board with a footnote to the bill, if you would like to go look at it.
All right. The legislative committee met and discussed resolution number 7. Legislative committee recommends adoption of resolution number 7 as amended, with the following changes, some grammatical changes, as well as language change here in the second whereas, to change the word such as to including but not limited to, writing out the name of the AFM, and writing out the name of the PRO Act, as shown here on the screen. I will open the floor for discussion regarding resolution number 7. Is there any discussion?
Can I ask a couple questions here?
Please.
Considering, I agree with the last whereas, and considering considering Congress has already passed it, or at least the House of Representatives, I was wondering if you considered aiming that at the Senate in the title, because it's generally, instead of urging Congress to pass the PRO Act, urging the Senate. And then those, I don't know, the 3 things that are there, it's my understanding that the third one, even, I mean, it would be card check straight out, wouldn't it? No elections.
What they're asking for in the PRO Act?
Yeah. I may be wrong about
I don't know. I'm sorry.
And then just a bit of a semantic thing. I'm wondering if we really want to put the whole collection from non-members first. But that's a bit of a semantic argument, mainly for my organizer's self, because it's not about money, even though the boss tries to make it about money.
Yep. Okay. So that's the discussion. So I guess we'll take those points one at a time. So does anyone object to changing the word Congress in the subject to the Senate? Does anyone object to changing the word Congress? I'm going to say the United States Senate. Changing Congress in the title to the United States Senate. Is there any objection to changing the word Congress to the United States Senate? Was that 3 times?
That's 4. You got it.
Okay. No objection. We will add that change to this resolution. And then I think the next thing that you wanted to do was to maybe switch the first and second bullet points. Is that what you are proposing, Todd?
I would even say the first one should be third, but like, I get it.
Well, putting it in the middle makes it least important.
Okay, there you go.
So is there any objection to switching the first and second bullet points? Is there any objection to switching the first and second bullet points? Is there any objection, to switching the first and second bullet points? What? Sorry. Okay, hearing no objection, we will include that change to the amended resolution number 7. Is there any other discussion regarding resolution number 7 as amended? Is there any other discussion regarding resolution 7 as amended? Is there any other?
Naomi, I have one thing. Do we need to put the Senate in down below?
I believe it's already there in the last one.
It says here already.
It went all small. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. It went all small on me. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so hearing no further discussion, well, actually, I'll make sure one more time. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing no further discussion, I would like to propose that we vote on the adoption of resolution number 7. Thanks, Mike, for starting the poll. All right, 5 seconds. All right, you can close the poll. Resolution number 7 is adopted by a vote of 32 yes to 0 no. Whew, we did it. Thank you everyone for your patience. We thought that this would move faster, and I think that the resolution discussion did move faster, and the board will make a note that we need more time for business next year.
I've already made that note. I think we came in just about the same as last year.
Okay. So, yeah, we just tried to do more in less time.
Yep.
Are we at interlocking? Okay. Okay. Thank you all. I will turn it back over to Chair Mike Smith.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and time on this. I know this is kind of the word I created this morning, tediosity, but we need to do this to make it right. So thank you, and I appreciate you sticking around for this. If there's nothing else, any points of information for the meeting today, I will adjourn, but I would remind you once again that this evening at 8:30 p.m. is virtual happy hour. The links are out there, so please join us for a libation and conversation this evening. All right, this general session today is adjourned.